We'll make a summary from where we're up to. In chapter 263, Perek Reish Samach Gimel, on page 533, in Ayin Beis, Chelik Aleph, begins the discussion of the Shem HaChodesh. But to understand that, let's just do a summary from this whole section that started in chapter 228. So briefly, the Rebbe Rashab was in search of the interface between the infinite and the finite, which he defined as being not just Keser, for the reasons that he explained much earlier, because Keser ultimately does not have both components together. Atik is always removed, and Arich is always connected to the Netzalim, to the emanations. So Rebbe Rashab went into that. It's Chochmas Timah, the unconscious mind. Chochmas Timah has both elements. Has an element of that which is the Maitzil, the source, Atik, and that which is this root of the Netzalim, of the emanations of the structure of existence, because it's Chochmah. It has already the shape of wisdom. To explain that, he was going through a whole Zohar on the Pasuk, if you remember, Ki Asisa Pella, and he explained, and in chapter 228, he explained the two interpretations in Zohar. It's very relevant, you'll see. The first interpretation, that Aleph is Chochmah, and it's rooted in Pella, in Keser. Pella means awe, but not the Chochmah itself is awe. It's only how Chochmah conceals Keser that connects it to that. So in other words, it's more through the concealment. The second interpretation, the second Pirush in Zohar, is that Pella is Aleph. Aleph Hatanin and Aleph Beis Aleph Bina, that Aleph is Pella, and that the Aleph itself, which means Chochmah itself, wisdom itself, has a sense of that which is beyond wisdom. So it's a critical difference, even on a basically psychological level. When you have wisdom, when an idea comes to you, is it that it's rooted in a place that's beyond, or does the wisdom itself have it, which of course makes the interface much deeper? Because then in our wisdom we can have a sense of that, of the awe of the divine that is completely beyond us. And that's when he explains, and how's that possible? Because it seems like a contradiction. So he says that's why the Zohar says that Aleph, the shape of the Aleph shows you. The Aleph is made up of a Yud Lamaila. That's the awe, the Pella. It's made of a Yud Lamata, which is how Aleph Bina, how Aleph comes down into comprehension, and is connected by the Vav Ksovis. In other words, you say Da, but that's the Yud Lamata, and is connected by the Kav, the line, which connects the two. And that's when he says, to understand that, we have to understand Shema. What's Shema? Which is, he's going back to now. Shema is, I think we should just explain this very briefly, because this is from Eitz Chaim, that there's four configurations of how the Yud Kei Vav Kei is counted. There's Mili Alfin, it's called Mili Heyin and Mili Yudin, which means when the Yud Kei Vav Kei itself is Yud Kei Vav Kei is made in 26. Yud is 10, Hey makes it 15, so 21 is with the Vav, and Hey, so 26. But there's another thing in Kabbalah that speaks about the Miluyim. Milui is when you go deeper, because the energy of the letters, of the word, is not just the word, it's also how the word breaks down. So Yud is really 20, because Yud is Yud Vav Dalet. So we have 20 there. And here there's different ways. How do you write a Hey? That's the real thing. You can write a Hey Aleph. You can write a Hey, and Hey Yud. So here's the difference. Ma is that the Heys are Hey. So you have Yud is 20, Hey is 10. That's 30. Vav is Vav Aleph Yud. Vav also you can write with the Aleph. Vav Aleph Vav rather. That's 13. So we have 33. And then again, I'm sorry, what did I say? Huh? Hey Aleph, I'm sorry. We have 20, Hey Aleph is 6, another Hey Aleph, the second Hey Aleph is another 6, is 12, and 20 is 32, and 13 is 45. That's the first Mili Ma. In Shem Ban, it's a Mili Heyin. So Shem Ban, you'd count Hey instead of Hey Aleph, so that makes it 20, plus the Yud is another 20, is 40. And the Vav, you just count without anything. There's no Aleph, no Yud. Vav is 12, that makes it 52. Right. In Shem Sag, which is the next Shem, you have everything is Mili, now you're Mili Yudin, but so like this. Huh? Shem Saga is also Mila Yud. Yeah. So you have like this. Shem Saga is like this. So you have Yud is always 20. That's 20. The Hey Yud is now 15. The other Hey Yud is 15. So 30 and 20 is 50. And the Vav Aleph Vav is 30. Is 13. That's 63. Okay. And finally, Shem Ab is of course the number 72. Is the completed of all of them. You have Yud is 20. Hey is 15, 15, 30, and 20 is 50, and Vav Yud Vav is 12 and 22 is 62, right? 72. I'm sorry, 50 and 20. So bottom line, what's the significance of all these four different configurations? So he's going to explain it now in this perspective, but I just want to go back to the Aleph. So Shem Ma, what? Mem Beis is the Mem Beis. It's not connected to this. No. Shem Mab is connected to Anu B'Choyach. It's a different. It's not the configurations of Yud-Kei Vavkei. Yeah, these four are all Yud-Kei Vavkei. Essentially, what Chassidus explains is that Yud-Kei Vavkei, all transmissions go through. Starts with a Nekuda, Chachma, Espashtus. It spreads out Bina. In other words, you start with a point, an expansion, a line that transmits the Vav, and then by the Makabel, the recipient, where he receives it. So it's really this. Even the shape describes any transmission. Any transmission again starts with a point, an expansion when the point is embellished upon, transmission of that idea or whatever it is that you're transmitting, like the line, the pipe, so to speak, and then as the recipient received it is the last hey. So that's Yud-Kei Vavkei. But in the transmission itself, there are four different configurations how that happens. So the one that's most significant, really leading up to, is Shem Ma, the Shem Ma, which is Gematria Adam. Ma is Bittel, as he explains, and Ma is Chachma is Koyach Ma. So in this whole discussion of the Aleph, that Chachma has in it, Koyach refers to Chachma as it's like in a shape and form, a faculty, but Ma is like V'nochnu Ma Pashpashto, and all the different things Bittel. So it refers to Ma, what? So Chachma senses when a person has an idea in their mind, there's a sense like that spark of idea, like a flash. It's something beyond you. You know it's coming from somewhere beyond you. It's like he says in Tanya, in Perek Lamed Hey, in the Haggadah, from Shemai to Memorei, that a Chachma is Margish Hu Levade Ve'ein Zolosei. Chachma Datzilis. Because Chachma senses something beyond. Bina understands that I understand. Bina is like to say, I understand. Chachma is that the Inyan Herzach. It's a big difference. So you need both, but Bina is yesh. Bina is already an individual comprehending on my terms. I understand. Chachma is more like you're like almost being makabel, like channeling a wisdom beyond you. So Chachma is the meeting point between Elokus and Elam. That's why Chachma. That's the whole Arichas here. Chachma Datzilis. Atzilus B'chlal is Chachma in the worlds. You know, Atzilus Mekan Abba Mekan Batzilis. So Chachma manifests in Atzilus. Bina is Bria. The Midas Zah is Yitzira, Malchus is Asiya. But in Atzilus itself, Chachma Atzilus is the place where they meet. So that's the connection to the Chachma Stima. Now he's bringing it into the level of Chachma Gluya, because the Rebbe Rashab, his goal here is to show a place where existence meets that which is beyond existence. In other words, we have a relationship, even that which is completely beyond us, but also in a way that doesn't annihilate us, that doesn't destroy us. So it's within the system, but it's also beyond it. So Aleph, and that's the second interpretation, Pella and Aleph. So Aleph, to explain Aleph, he goes, now we want to understand Aleph, we have to understand Shem Ma. Because Shem Ma is Milei Alfin. In other words, what makes Shem Ma unique is because the Hays and the Vav is with an Aleph, which means the shape of the Aleph, as I said, is the Yud above, the Yud below. So it's the point above, the point below, bring it down, and the Vav that connects them. And that Shem Ma is the bittul of Atzilus or Chachma that creates the interface between the two. So then begins a long discussion in chapter 229 that concludes, not concludes completely, but concludes a section in the end of chapter 262. And what is this whole discussion here? That what does Shem Ma do? Shem Ma, like he says, Mechaber Shnei Hofchim. Shnei Ma has the power to integrate two opposites. And he goes into a whole discussion of mashpia makabel, of the giving and the recipient, and explaining the difference between Tohu and Tikun. Because Tohu is the model of chaos, where there's no mashpia mekabel. And briefly explained that in Tohu there are two major flaws. And to understand Tikun properly, you have to understand Tohu when it's not working well. In Tohu, basically the two flaws are, from the perspective of the eris of Tohu, of the energy of Tohu, is that they leave no room for anyone. It's ani emlech, me and nothing else. So every sphira, every midah, every emotion there has no room for anyone else. There's no bittul. There's no ma, obviously. Now remember, Tohu, as we're going to learn, comes from Shem Sag. It's a whole different level. It's not Shem Ma. In Kabbalah itself, here earlier he said that it's really ban de Sag, because sometimes you say Tohu is ban, and Tikun is ma. Ma and ban is usually Tohu, ban and ma is Tohu and Tikun. But he could pretend ban is the root of ban is in Sag. Okay, it's not really relevant to go into detail. Ban, remember, is behema, gematria behema. Ma is gematria adam. So to explain Tohu, the first problem in Tohu is that the energy of Tohu is not soivel. It's not tolerate anything besides itself, and therefore there's no interaction, and it's ultimately going to lead to chaos. And also the kelim of Tohu also has kelim. Remember, in Akudim, there's only one keli, 10 eris in one keli, 10 energies in one. Here there's already 10 containers. But from the level of perspective of the containers, in Tohu, the containers not only don't tolerate each other, but they don't give and take from each other. Because in kelim is the inyan of mashpia makabel. It is the inyan of hashpah. They don't tolerate one another. The kelim of Tikun Tohu also have a problem. Their problem is there's no mashpia, no makabel. And not only are they not giving, they don't even want to receive. Even zenena v'zelei chassid doesn't exist by them. In other words, even if I lose nothing, but you benefit, they also don't want that. Am mi shali shali shalach shalach, which according to the Yesh Emrim in Pirkei Avos is midas daim. The Tanakama, according to the Tanakama, the Rebbe Rashab explains, he's talking about the eris of Tohu, where they're not sevel one another. So shali shali shalach shalach is not midas baininess. But what is midas daim? Zenena v'zelei chasa. So bottom line is, now Tikun, on the other hand, comes to repair this problem on both levels. Tikun repairs, first of all, on the level of Eir. How does Tikun repair? Because Tikun is Shem Ma, bittul. So every light and energy does tolerate the other. And he explained at length, what does that mean in Aveda? In psychologically speaking, that means that the Meichin weaken the intensity of the emotions. Because the air and energy is really the emotions that they're just expressing themselves. Chesed is chesed, and there's no room for anything else. There's no room for gvura. Love and no discipline. In Tikun, the energy is weaker, and therefore it also weakens the energy of the midah, of the emotion, is weaker. So at least they tolerate each other. Like we spoke the example, like you said, two people who are in total disagreement in a room. The first step is, let's not just shoot at each other. Everyone has to just be quiet. Leave room. Doesn't mean you have shalom yet. You don't have yet peace. But the beginning of any mediation is that you have two individuals who at least leave room for one another. Till now, you've been yelling at each other, not even be able to hear one another. But then comes the second level of Tikun, where it's not just weakens the midas and their intensity and their yeshes and their self, but the midas also, the meichin disciplines them now and trains them to actually communicate with one another. And there should be mashpia makabel. Remember, just like Tohu, there's no mashpia makabel inside the kelim. In Tikun, the kelim are expanded, kelim rechavim, and the kelim add the component not just that there's a weakening and a tolerance of the midas, but also that they actually give and take from one another. And he explained this in the last Maimed at length, that Tiskal is all the different levels. That first they give and take one another, then they become like one symbiotic whole. He gave the example of the human body, where all the Evodim, everything works together. Not just works together, to the point they become mamish one. When you say a person, for example, a human body, you don't say it's made up of parts. Huh? You don't say it's made up of parts. You say it's one body that has many components, like a piece of music. One symphony has thousands of musical notes. So you have one, and remember, the body is the dogma for Adam Iskaulus. That's the human organism. Same thing with nature. Nature works so well together that you can't even tell. Once things are working, like for example, when a person is walking, what's working that? Is it the legs? Is it the willpower? Is it the arms? Everything feeds everything, so it becomes like one whole that's made up of components. In Tohu, that doesn't exist. So again, Tikun therefore also repairs the second part, that not only do you tolerate one another, but they actually give one another. And they know that they can't be complete without one another, which of course that is ultimately Achdus. And that comes from Shema. Shema, that's which is made, which radiates in Atzilus. What is the power? The power of Bittul. That's the Yud Kei Vav Kei Mile Alf. And now, in this Maimer, Reish Samach Gimel, we're going to start learning from Reish Samach Chei because they learned till there. But in Reish Samach Gimel, let me just summarize what these Parakim, each Perek says. I will do is one thing. Let's just do the bottom of Tohu Ayin Beis, 532. I'll just sum up how the Rebbe Rashab sums up the whole sugi himself. I'll just so now let's just read it inside. What did we explain earlier about Tohu and Tikun? The midas the Tohu b'chinas anfim mispardim. The midas, the emotions of Tohu were separate branches. And this pirud, this separation, this divisiveness was on two levels, was on two things. One thing, they didn't give room for one another. That's mitzad ha'eres. And the second thing, they were not mashpia and makabel. They don't transmit and they don't receive from one another. And we explained that what they don't tolerate or give space for one another, that's mitzad the energy, mitzad the eir. The mitzad ha'eir hayashpa gam b'teyu. Mitzad ha'eir, there is hashpa in Tohu. Tohu transmits energy. There is energy. It's not a dead world. There is a transmission. Zak mitzad teikef hayeshes v'amitziyas. But because it's so intense, the yeshes, the ego, so to speak, the self, and mitziyas, and the being of each of the midas, le nosa makom the sfira acheres. There leaves no room for another sfira. Rak ano emlech.
Sfira here meaning the ore of the sfira?
Yeah. The pashtas there, yeah. Rak ano emlech. I rule v'lo yizul aseh, and no one else. Everything to be mamcheshet. Think of somebody in your life that's that way. Everybody has people like that. Or sometimes we're in that state of mind. You think so?
Sometimes.
Yeah. That's the first thing. And that which they don't mashpia and they're not mashpia makabel, that's the kalim. Because you see, Kabbalah is as soon as you say makabel, you're already talking kalim. In Eir, there's no inyan of Kabbalah yet. Eir is transmission. Even the transmission, they have no room for one another. Now here, Bichlal, there's no mashpia makabel. The hashpah be'efek kazeh shayidezeh mekablim min hamakablim hu ba'hashpah sheb'chinas hakelim. That this hashpah, that you're makabel from the makabel, in other words, the Eir is makabel from the makabel, is the hashpah in the level of kelim. U'bekelim d'toy lo yhoye b'hem hashpah klal. And this in this perspective of the of Kabbalah, that altogether doesn't exist in Tohu. So Tohu basically is 10 energies just shooting all over the place. They don't tolerate each other. When it comes to be Makabel, B'chal Shtavas today. So Hashpah there is, but they don't leave room for any other. That's why they'll destroy each other. Like the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva is the example that the Nogu Kovid Zeb is there. But Kalim altogether doesn't exist in the sense because there's no receiving.
Little Derek Hager, but it's good context. What is the midah of racham in Tohu?
It's a good question. We mentioned it. I once wrote something. Tiferes l'cheda always means that it unites chesed and gvura. The only thing I recall once looking it up, I think Tiferes in Tohu does not have that element.
So
It's remember Tiferes has a third component that's not just chesed and gvura. It's also a level of its own. In its root, Tiferes could be could be compassion, rachamim. Rachamim doesn't necessarily mean a combination of chesed and gvura. Anyway, it's something that needs to be researched. It's a good question. But one thing is for sure, it did not prevent the Shviras HaKel. So, you could also have, maybe I've just had a thought, which I never saw anywhere. It says, Reit fi shalom. The Rebbe would say, people who pursue peace. But there's the people who chase away the peace. Sometimes you have two people arguing, and a third person is so aggressive and saying, making peace, he makes the machlekes much worse. So maybe that's the Tiferes of Tohu. It's trying to make shalom between chesed and gvura, but it's too aggressive. Yesh leim b'derech hefshe. That's a mention. They say like, Blut wird sich gießen, but shalom wird sein. You know that one? Blood will spill, but there'll be shalom. So basically, becomes Elohei ben mashpol klal ubetikun. Okay, that's Tohu. Ubetikun is taken beis inyonim, and in Tikun repairs these both things. Tikun ha'er lies b'chinas miyad v'chlishishu b'chinas habitul litin mokum d'sfira acheres. The first thing Tikun does is it repairs the air, the energy, that there should be, it's diminished and weaker. So the intensity of the yeshus of the midah is not there. So therefore there's bittul, and it leaves room for another sfira, for another dimension, another level. V'gam Tikun HaKelim, and Tikun also does the repair of the Kelim. Lias mashpiyim u'mekam zemzeh shezeh tachas hashlemus. It also repairs the Kelim that there should become not just, in other words, not just the absence of war. Shalom, peace, is not just the absence of war, it's actually a symbiosis, what we call interconnectivity, and real hiskalus, where everything works with everything. As he said, bebli ashiyim tzadeish v'seif, it's like one entity. One perfect entity that complements each other. The configuration is complete. Now, to explain this, starts chapter 263. So he starts like this. V'nikol inyan hatikun. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. I'm just going to summarize it. V'nikol inyan hatikun. See, this now starts. You see, this whole thing that we just discussed is going back literally, as I said, from Reish Chaf Hey. So we're talking a good 70 pages that he just summarized. And if you're wondering why you can't just read these few lines, why do you have to read the 70 pages? You have to read the 70 pages. Yeah, exactly. That's from Reish Chaf Hey. Now we're going to go and say, V'hinei kol inyan hatikun, and he goes back to Shema. Because the Shema he hasn't really mentioned throughout. He's only alluded to it. So this whole Tikun, Hein Tikun ha'eres, V'hein Tikun ha'kelim. Both parts. Say the first part that allows it to be tolerate one another. The other that creates mashpia makabel. Hakol nasa edei Shema ha'chodesh hayetzem emitzcha da'ak. It all comes from the new Shema ha'chodesh that comes out of the forehead of Adam Kadmon. So let me explain that before we continue, because that's to understand this mind, you have to know what this is. In Eitz Chaim, he takes a little later. There's a whole section that talks about the structure of the human body. Remember, Adam Kadmon is called the primordial man, is the tzir of Adam, but in this perfect form, which means, like it says everywhere in Chassidus, that Adam Kadmon is the first thing after the Kav. After the Tzimtzum and after the Kav, Adam Kadmon is the first central structure. Obviously, it's all very amorphous and very abstract. There's no Kelim and Neiris as we know them. But it's the beginning. And basically, as he explained at length much earlier, in chapter, because he's taken the chapter, I think, 164. Yeah, Kuf Samach Daled. He explained that Ak is like... Machshava Geduma Da'ak has the entire picture of all Zman and Mokim, of all time and space that will come later. So there's no world like Ak. Ak is the Mamutza, in that sense, intermediary, because it's like the snapshot of all Seder Shtalshlus. So if you were to look at the seed, everything is there. And they explained much earlier that the Mamutza of Ak, the interface of Ak, is different than the other interfaces. It's not an interface between infinite and finite. It's in the finite, the klal and the prat. In other words, first you have the big picture, and then you have the details. Like, for example, when you say the famous line from the Baal Shem Tov, that everything is divine providence, even when a leaf turns over. It's all arose machshava gduma da'ak. What does that mean? That the whole picture of existence, we're talking about everything now, akudim, nekudim, vrudim, Atzilus, Bri, Yitziyah, all the way, and every detail in time and space. We're not talking about Bechira now, human choice. Is Yedei Hakel. When you say Hakol Tzofay in Pirkei Avos, that everything is how do you translate Tzofay? He knows everything, all knowing. You're talking about all is foreseen. That's Adam Kadmon. So Adam Kadmon, remember, Mitzad God, he didn't need any of this. It's only for us to understand and create a relationship that created a shtalshus that makes sense. which is why we work also that way. When you make a proper plan, you don't start with the details. You first start with the picture. And then you break it down into details. But everything is there in the blueprint. So he explained, for example, when you say, Stakel baraisa bara alma, that God looked into the blueprint of Torah and created the world, that's Ak. In Elam, that's Adam Kadmon. On a lower level, it's Atzilus, but as you said earlier, that's Adam Kadmon in general. So to really understand all of Ishtalshalas, everything is rooted in Adam Kadmon. So to what is really going on, and what's going on here is explaining, to understand Adam Kadmon, we have to understand the human body is actually a reflection, because we're created b'tselem u'dmur Elokim, like he says here. So the human body is the best microcosm. From the flesh we behold God. Right here says in the middle, everything is an Adam Kadmon. Nas Adam b'tzalmei Musenu. So to understand it, you have to understand the human body is the best teacher to appreciate the levels that Adam Kadmon. So basically, what he's talking about is here that the root of Atzilus is an Adam Kadmon. So this is what. So he quotes here from Eitz Chaim. Eitz Chaim obviously doesn't have all this introductions that I just said. It doesn't explain it. So Eitz Chaim just lays out the map. What's the map? So he takes the human face. This is unbelievable analysis of the human face. I mean, if we did this, I would do it in a way like, actually with imagery. So what's the human face? You have the forehead, you have the eyes, you have the ears, you have the nose and the mouth. That's what he's referring to here. So it's Metzach, Enayim, Oizen, Chetem, Peh.
We didn't mention Enayim.
He'll mention it later.
Oh, later.
Right here, not, because I'll explain in a moment.
Yeah.
So Eitz Chaim, he says like this, that these are the main features. Of course, there's also the beard and there's the skull, which is also part of it. But we're talking now this component here. So what he's basically saying is goes like this. The Metzach is in its own category. We'll talk about that in a minute. Shema. Before I get to Shema, let's talk about the others. The different four Shemas, Ab, Sag, Ban, and Ma, reflect these four different components of the head. Shem Ab is the Metzach. We'll soon discuss that. The Shem Sag is the root of Tohu, is the Havolim, the orifices of the eyes, the ears, and the nose.
I'm sorry, that was Shem.
The Havolim. Shem Sag. Shem Ban is rooted in Shem Sag, so it's for all practical purposes like Shem Sag. And it evolves from Shem Sag. And Shem Ma is
No.
Shem Ma is rooted in Shem Ab, in the Metzach. That's what he's going to explain. So what does he say? He says in Eitz Chaim like this, actually quite interesting. He says, the difference between, for example, why the eyes are not counted here, because the eyes are orifices, but only to see. It doesn't take in or take out. It only takes in images. The nose, you actually breathe in and out. It transmits, and the mouth, the ears, and the nose are. I'm sorry. Bidirectional, right?
Ears
too.
Usually here.
No, you hear but you can go into the ear. In the eye, you can't enter the eye. You can't put your finger into an eye.
No, but light is or Yoshin or Hoser. There's the light extreme.
Yeah, but it's an orifice, but it's not a hevel. That's what he says. It's a hevel that's filled. It's true, but because the eyeballs fill it. That's what he says in Eitz Chaim. That's why the Enayim are not counted here. The Havolim, which is what it appears to be, is that the Havolim have two advantages. One, it's entering, you can see, for example, you can see through the nose, mouth, and ears what's going on inside of a body. You can actually study it. That means that it has a connection to the deeper human being. But because it's a hevel, because it's a space, it leaves room for a distortion. In other words, it can get infected and stuff like that, just as an example. So it's going to be the root of Tohu. In other words, it's rooted, as he's going to explain, it's rooted in the deep part of the human being. Because, for example, like he says, the whole discussion here about when you speak, that's in this perek, right? It starts with speaking, correct? That's the Hevel Hadibur. That speaking has the power, when someone speaks passionately and emotionally, you reach much deeper than almost anything else. It's a very deep expression. How is that possible? If dibur is speaking is coming just from an external part of your mouth, because the mouth is not just the physical orifice reflects that you actually can express a part of your inner soul. Let me just add one thing, maybe that will clarify. The fact that there's an entry point, and it's not closed, means is a physical expression of a ruchnisdik manifestation, a spiritual one, that part of the body actually expresses something very deep. So both the mouth through speaking, the ears through hearing, and the nose in its way through smell have an ability to experience. Like for example, he doesn't mention smell here, but later in other places it talks about smelling salts. You know, with a smell reaches into his mechayes hanefesh. It can revive a person.
Remember the
There we talked about reach, right? Yeah, and so bottom line is all this is not explained here, but no way to really understand it if you don't understand the structure here. So eyes, I would have to say, eyes he says clearly, in Eitz Chaim he says clearly the eyes are not counted in this because the eyes are an orifice, but there's no entry point. You can't enter. Let's put it this way: at least in physically, you can't enter into the eyes and travel inside the body. That's the bottom line. That physically means that the eyes are a reflection. Listen, people see things. There's a lot of power in seeing, but it's a different. It's in a different category. I guess from all eyes, you also don't have the same unikas achitzenim that you have. Remember, look, today we know that, of course, they can study an eye, with certain instruments, and you can see inside the eye as well. But the fact of the matter is, for example, surgery today is often done through the nose and through the mouth. The nose and mouth are very similar because they both go right into the ears are a different category. But that's what he calls. That's that. So now here's the story. The mouth, oizen, chet, and peh is all sag. All sag. Look, he said the shem sag hu havolim the oizen, chet, and peh the ak. V'zeh b'chinas hateyu. Remember, in ak, it's all perfect. In Tohu, it's going to get distorted and create shviras hakelim. Now let's move now to shem ma. So what's shem ma in this whole structure? So what he says in Eitz Chaim is like this. Bear with me. It's Kabbalah. He says when ab and sa come together in shem in ak, it's like a yichud that creates a new thing, a new entity, a new birth. It's called shem ma. That's why it's called hachodash. Ab is not new. As he says a little later, ab is rooted in the highest levels, and that's why shem ab, like he says here, you can't even talk about shem ab. Look below. Ein lonu reshus l'daber. Like 9 lines from the bottom. We'll read it in a second because I know you learned it, but I think it's critical to this. Without this, you can't really. So Shem Ab is beyond. But when Shem Ab interacts with Shem Sag, it creates a new entity called Shema HaChodash. So in other words, Shem Ab would be called Yoshan in that context. Like when we say Maskele Eson Hazrachi, Eson Loshan Yoshan. That's the Maimon, Tovshin Gimel. The Rebbe brings some of these footnotes. He talks about it a bit. So Shem Ab and Sag will yield a Shem Ma HaChodash, which will be the root of Tikun, that will repair the Tohu that comes from Sag, from the Havolim of the mouth, ears, and the ears, mouth, and nose. That's now. The challenge here is you have to remember, like the Tzemach Tzedek says right at the beginning of Sheresh Mitzvah Tefillah. You have to mafshit it. You have to abstract it from the physical. This is not the physical is only a reflection of the spiritual. So this is So when you say eyes, it's so tangible, you can confuse it. So remember, we're talking spiritual levels. So when you study a body, like the Rebbe once said, I remember Fabreng, he says, you look at a face, you see Yud Kei Vav Kei. You look at a face, you see all of this. Now we see a face, but when you train yourself, it's really rooted. So the Adam Elyon is when you say we created B'Tselem Elokim. Let's define it. Pasuk and Bereshis. Simple pasuk. God said, "Nas b'Tzameinu Kudmuseinu." So the klotz kasha is, what does that mean? B'Manoshach. And what animals and the stars and the sun are not created according to God's image? What does it mean that this is in God's image and that's not? Everything's created by everything's reflection of God's plan. The answer is that a human body, physical body, and soul, of course, has in it a particular personality and shape and form that reflects the divine, that an animal doesn't have. And therefore, for example, the concept, let's say, that Meichen comes before Midas. An animal doesn't have that. An animal's controlled by Midas, not by Meichen. So everything, if you study the human being, we're talking about a non-distorted human being, a healthy human being, the way we were meant to be, you have a real reflection of the structure of existence. Even the fact that we all function, the scholars that we talked about. So when you talk about these levels, you're really talking about it's all nishtalshel mehen, it's all rooted in the spiritual dimension. So what's the spiritual airs? You study a physical air. What's an air? An air has a hole in it, an orifice, that enters inside and allows you to hear. We're not talking about now the koyach hashmiya per se. We're just talking about the physical shape and form. That reflects that the oizen has some type of interface between the inner and the outer. Or that a finger doesn't have, for example. That other parts of the body don't have. Unless you cut it open, God forbid. We're talking about naturally. Even from a medical point of view, if we didn't have ears, if we didn't have any ways to enter, you couldn't make many tests. You couldn't figure out a lot of things without cutting open the body. So just on a physical level, it gives us access, so to speak. But on a spiritual level, it's referring to, that's the havolim. Now, Shem Ma HaChodesh that he's talking here is coming from the Metzach. The Metzach, as he's going to explain, has no orifice at all. But, as this Maimer will explain, that the Metzach has its own way of expressing the inner dimension of the human being. So the essential theme of this Maimer, the whole Maimer, not just this chapter, is that there's two ways to reflect the inside of a human being. A Metzach reflects it, a forehead reflects it in a very profound way, but only a reflection of it. You can't actually touch it. Like when you see Chochmas Adam Teir Panav, you see the glow of a wise person's face. You look at the Rebbe speaking, and whatever it does to you, you see the face glowing. You're getting the etzem, but you're only getting a reflection of it because you're only seeing it. You only see an outer dimension.
How do you understand what it says here? That his chushim are mizdamim to his chushim.
One second. No, about that. We're going to have to go over that. Okay. I know. One second. Okay. When on the other hand, when you hear someone speak, whether it's from the ears or like you explained, or the mouth speaking, there you get also an access in a deeper level, but it's not as deep as Shem Ab. It's only Sag, but what you get is very tangible, and that's the distinction between the two. Now, how is it relevant to our whole discussion here? Its relevance is because what he's doing here is he's connecting the interface of Atzilus to the interface of Ak. That everything we discussed in Atzilus, that a Tikun repairs and creates the bridge through Meichin, he's now explaining the root of it all is an Adam Kadmon. So the Tikun, the power of Tikun to repair Tohu, to repair the imbalance, and to become an interface between Elokus, the divine, and creation, all really takes place in Ak in a subtle form. But it's more specifically is the Shem Ma that comes down in the bittul of Tikun that has the power of the forehead of Ak.
Tohu takes place where in the Shalshal, though, after Ak?
Yeah. The Seder goes Ak, Akudim, Nukudim, Vrudim. Vrudim is Tikun. So basically after Ak is, as I said, is think of it as the big picture. Everything is a snapshot of everything. Then starts the real structure begins. Akudim is 10 energies in one keli. Then 10 energies in 10 kelim. But there's the chaos that we talked about, so Eiris and kelim. And Tikun, Vrudim, is where the skalos happens. But that skalos happens, you see, the beauty of what this does is, the eloquence of it is, it's not just that Atzilus is the place with interface. It really is remember, it's rooted, and Atzilus is really connecting you back to Ak, which connects you back to Elokus Lifnei Atzimtzum. That's really what's going on here. So if you didn't, I was thinking, if you don't have this whole maimah, you don't have this whole discussion, what we'll have is that yes, the chachma and chachmas temar mamutza, but you don't really have to trace your way back to Ak Lifnei HaTeyu. So you have Tohu created an imbalance, Tikun repaired it through bittul, and therefore there's a interface. You're back to connected to God through His kalus. You're connected because the bittul allows you to reconnect. But the connection to Ak really realigns the problems. You see, Tohu messed up everything. And now that by connecting to God, you really get the realignment of how it really worked. Because in Ak, it was all rooted and it was fine. In Ak, there was no problem. I mean, I'm saying this only, I'm taking...
How Tohu distort Ak?
Because once it comes in Tohu, the havolim that were rooted in Ak clearly didn't work properly. I mean, this I'm saying b'derech efshar completely. I'm thinking how it is in Aveda. Maybe it could be the following: if Ak is the way God created Adam and Chava in Gan Eden before the Chet, Just, the perfect human being. Everything is working perfectly. The eyes look where they should be looking, the ears hear what they should be hearing, the mouth, the nose, everything. And then they ate the Eitz Hadas. What happened to the Tzira Adam? So it says clearly they lost, that's what it says, Ayeka. They lost, the Tzelem Elikim was concealed.
So that's a kudin?
No, I wouldn't say that. I don't know. That I've never seen. No, that's Tohu. It's for sure connected to Tohu. Chet Eitz Hadas and Tohu go together, yeah. Because it's a distortion. A kudim, I don't know where it works. Kudim is not necessarily. But what happened there is like this. So it says, for example, that when an animal will not attack a human being because they say Tzelem Elikim. So why does it attack a human being? Because Tzelem Elikim is concealed. Daniel, but Gever Arayis didn't have, his Tzelem Elikim was revealed. So in other words, once the Elikus is seen in the Tzir of Adam, Tzelem Elikim, that's what it says. The Chet Eitz Hadas concealed it. So you have to say something like this. The eyes, the ear, not the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth, when they're used properly, in Ak, everything is fine. When they're not used properly, they create Teyu. Now, the question is why the eyes, like for example, Chet Eitz Hadas, the Alter Rebbe says, affected all the Chushim except Reach, except the nose. The story with the tabak, that he said that you want to also contaminate. So I know you have to understand that. In other words, the eyes could also... the eyes could also become tayudik, so to speak. Okay, that I don't know. But the chetim peh, in other words, that the openings of these things, because they open you up to the world around you, you could also hear the wrong things. So there's unique sechetzenim that can come from it. And how is that repaired? In other words, the tikun of it all is because in Ak, there was magdim refu l'maka, basically. That before there'd be Torah, there was Ab and Sag interacting, created a new Shema that would manifest through Bittul in Atzilus would repair this problem. I mean, that's the Cheder. Again, this I have not seen anywhere, but I'm just trying to translate it into a structure that we can relate to. Make sense?
Yep.
The Cheder, that's something like. The question is why Dafka Ezen Chetem Peh are so, what happens to them? Why do they create Tohu? That needs to be that he doesn't really explain. Probably in Eitz Chaim he does. It's definitely the holes are the orifice is the key thing, because the orifice definitely has two sides to it. It opens you up to deeper things, but could also let in the wrong things. And then when it contaminates you, it's deep. Like an infection on your finger is much easier to deal with than an infection that once it enters the body. So instead they have that's what pashtus what the thing is here. Wow. Okay, so that's the interface. I think I'm going to have to let me just read a few lines in this Perek. And then we'll go to the next Perek. So he says like this, okay. So all the tikkun of it all starts with Shema, is Nasa becomes through the Shema HaChodesh, Hayetzim and Mitzcha Da'ak. Remember also the end of this sugya, he's going to explain that in Shema there's Ha'ara of Shema and Etzim of Shema. If you remember in the last Maimer, look at the last line, on 531, he says that what Chochmah has ain't safe in it, so it's also very relevant here. In other words, Atzma Shema, but to get there, he has to explain the structure. Okay, so this Shema Chodesh is Yetzim and Mitzcha Da'ak. Just for the record, this is explained in Eitz Chaim. That's where it says this lashon. This lashon is Eitz Chaim lashon. It's explained in what I found so far in the Derech Mitzvah in Machzis HaShekel, and in the Bir Ram V'Shavsa, and the Rebbe Tzeichens in Tovshin Gimel. There's a Maimer Le'elam Yehei Adam Rach Gekona Altei Kasher Kares, where he talks about this. So the Rebbe has a whole footnote there where he Tzeichens this Ayin Beis. Remember, we didn't have the Ayin Beis when he Tzeichens it. The Rebbe had it, but he also Tzeichens the Teres Chaim Parsha Neach, which I looked up also, but he doesn't talk so much about the Shemus. He talks more about Teyu and Tikun. I mean, the language that everyone's familiar with is not this language. The language you're usually familiar with is that Tohu is rooted higher than Tikun. But there was a Shvira. Tikun repairs Tohu, and then it gets also the Eidus of Tohu. Like Tohu is Esav, the Bchar. Tikun is Yaakov, but the Birur has to come through Yaakov. Ma is Mavar Ban, the Behema, the Ish Mochama. And then you inherit the big Eidus of Tohu. But in Kabbalah is where's the root of that Tohu? That's Sag. That's higher than Ma. And Ma is Mevarer Ban, so through that you get Shem Ab, Shem Sag, and then Shem Ab.
But man in Adam Kadmon, man is higher than Sag too, or it's a product of the.
But there is no Shem Man and Ak on its own. It's a birth. It's a birthing from Ab and Sag. That's what it says.
Only Ma or Ban as well?
Not Ban. Ban seems to be how when Sag turns into Tohu, that becomes Ban. That's what it says more or less. That's what it also says there. The Rebbe say you have to look. You see all the Eitz Chaims are there. The ganze Sugi there. Sag the Sag and Ban the Sag. It's a little complicated. Okay, so 1 second. The Shem Sag who have volume the Ezen Chetem Peh. You'll see that Rosh Tevis time sometimes Aleph Ches Peh. The Ak, that means Ezen Chetem Peh. The Ak. V'zeu b'chinas haTehu. V'atikun hu m'shem ma. So essentially in Ak, the Metzach is reflected in Shema. The Ezen Chetem Peh, the ears, the nose and the mouth is Shema. So here goes. The Hini Yadua, the Ak hu mamutza b'nei Ein Sof ele ilms. V'kolosin hamtsoy the Ak hu sherotzna atzmos the Ein Sof shelifnei tzemtzem b'nei ilms bo b'chinas machshava gdum adak. It's known, and this is explained. He's going to say soon and before Arichas in Perek Kuf Samach Daled and on that Ak is the mamutza between the divine Ein Sof and Elamus. And what's the general emtsoya of Ak? This is very important because every mamutza here is different. That the rotzen of atzmos. This you could underline because this is a key line. Shalifnei atzimtzum be'ina Elamus bo b'chinas machshava dum the Ak. In other words, Ak is rooted also in something. Ak is rooted in the rotzen ha'elyon lifnei atzimtzum over the Eibishter wanted in Elamus. So that's the ishtalshlus, that the rotzen for Elamus lifnei atzimtzum becomes the machshava gduma the Ak, and that's its mamutza, right? Hein, two things. Hein harotzen bebrias v'isavas Elamus. Both the rotzen the Eibishter has in actually creating the Elamus, the worlds. Hein harotzen atzmi b'hagiluyim b'Elamus, and also the rotzen atzmi. It's interesting. Here he says harotzen. He says harotzen atzmi. Because Haratzon to create the world is not a tachlis of its own. It's a kavana is to create Gilui Alakus. It's not just the Ratzon Atzmi, however, is that there should be Giluyim in the elements. But both of these things are rooted Lifnei Atzimtzum, and both of these things manifest in Ak. So Ak really has two things. It's the map of creation, and it's also the map of how you Megal Alakus. That I never saw. That's pretty made. So in other words, if you want to know. Talk about reach.
You go to Ak.
Right. Was tut sich? Yeah. In order to retrace the steps, you need Ak. There's no way. Ak is the gatekeeper.
Specifically, what are you missing if you don't have that?
You have no way for us to return. Let's put it this way: if you had
what is that?
no, like this. There's Atzmos. Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu Divra Betachtenim. That in turn created a Rotzen. All the levels of Rotzen Lifnei Tzimtzum. Ak is the first place that it's after the Tzimtzum that it becomes a blueprint. He actually, the Eibishter gives us a blueprint. Here's the Torah. Here's my plan. You don't have the plan. How you ever going to get back? The plan is the place that you reconnect. Atzilus is not the plan. Atzilus is where you actually start. Plays itself out. The map, in a way, you could say it's also the map. It's the map and it's the guidebook. It's basically it's like saying, what would we do without Torah? With Selam Elikim, the Eibishter has a plan in us, but how would you know what to do? Remember, the Elam Hazeh is Elam Choshech. You don't see the way. You don't have an instinct. You have to follow something. Ag basically is essentially the Google map of all existence. That's the bottom line. Everything is there. But it's all in a map form. It's not in a form that we can. That's why you need the other elements. Tohu, Tikun. That's where the action takes place. Okay. Look how thorough he is here. That it's not just the kavanah in saying giluyim is not just the giluyim that the worlds need. Remember, we talked about two levels of eir. The eir that's lefi erech the elam is the eir that's. You mean the air
that goes through and
the air, not just that. No, the air that's only legalis atzme. Remember at the beginning of the Shavuos.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Not just that. Elegama giluim the eris atzmim she'ena be'erach elam is klal. See, this is the beauty of the interface here. In other words, Ak has it all. It's not just having one part of it. Everything is there. Wow. As I said, this is only in Ayin Beis you see such thoroughness, detail. Everything is spelled like here. Bavon the kavon of us meant to and now he could have just said it's ratzon for the elemus. He had a note. So ratzon for the side ratzon for brias elemus, side the giluyim, and not just the giluyim, but all giluyim. It's just very, it's like it's very clear. There's no way. Is hakol ba b'chinas machshava akduma zu. All this comes into this machshava akduma. What means machshava akduma? It means in this primordial thought. So it's like the thought of the Eibush. This is after the Tzimtzum, so it's already has some shape and form. Yeah. I mean, you could ask the question: what's the difference between the rotzen of the elemis lifnei Tzimtzum and the machshava akduma da'ak? It's obvious. One is after the Tzimtzum, one's before. Before the Tzimtzum, b'chlal neshayich. The whole thing is all within the so-called Godhead, in the Etzem. Here, it's at least already in the Fi Erech, our level. Because remember, at the end of the day, Yeshem She'ena Reich Asiyah Ta'ak is Ak She'ena Reich Lifnei Tzimtzum. So Ak is already closer to us than Elokus Lifnei Tzimtzum. And there's some. I mean, it all comes down to levels that keep on. The interface is all stepping stones, and there's no place where there's too big of a jump. You're always able to retrace. It's like a real ladder, like in this parsha last week's in the Sulam Mutzaratza. Yeah, you have to say Ak is the whole world. Machshava Gduma is, I guess, the. I'm not sure. That's a good question. Listen, the Ak is. It's like saying, is there a difference between Atzilus and Sfiras the Atzilus? Yeah, one defines the Evelt, and one defines what's going on there.
And in Machshava Gufa, there's all of Machshava and Machshava Gduma.
Look, in Chassidus it says, like I think in Ayin Beis, Samach Vav for sure, when he talks, he says, Seif Maise b'Machshava Tchila. So he teaches Machshava Tchila, but Tchila is Machshava Da'ak. So there's an Gufa, there's Tchila Machshava, there's Seif Machshava. No, Machshava Gduma Da'ak also has levels, for sure. Yeah. There's also, just like there's Machshava Dibra Maise, everything is an Ak. Whatever you're going to find in the lower level is an Ak, except remember, Ak, you have to think in terms that are not Eris and Kalim as we know them. There's nothing tangible there. I think the best example is a map. Someone who doesn't know what Earth looks like and just sees a map has no clue. He'll never understand what the world is like. When you have the world and you look at the map, then you understand what the map's role is, or a blueprint. So blueprint is a different dimension completely. It's not. But without it, you don't have you have no structure. Okay, so that. So, and in Ak, there are Hamshachas that are in the level of Hamshachas Atzmis or B'chinas HaToka. I think that's the same thing. Hamshacha Atzmis, it's not two things. Yeah. That in Agufa there's Hamshacha Atzmis, which means like an essential Hamshacha, B'chinas HaToka, like Atik, that is removed.
You're saying Atzmis and HaToka are the same?
Hamshacha Atzmis.
Yeah,
they're not the same, but it means it's the same level. Hamshacha Atzmis is B'chinas HaToka. It seems that way because he doesn't, it seems that in Inyan he should have said something like Echeret should have said that yes, but Hamshacha shehein b'chinas Hamshacha Atzmis b'chinas HaToka, v'yesh Hamshacha she'ha'ora b'chinas b'chinas shaychus.
You wouldn't need to repeat the B'chinas.
I don't know, but from what he's saying here, it looks like. V'zeu shenikra Adam Kadmon, and this is what it means that it's called Adam Kadmon. Kadmon means primordial. Kadmon means how would you translate Kadmon in English? First, Adam Kadmon.
Original.
The original. In other words, so it's so that itself means Hatoka. It means it's not Adam from here. It's saying something from the root. So Adam Kadmon, primordial is the right, but Adam Kadmon, primordial man. Means the original man. You say Echad Yachid Kadmon. You say the Eibush is a Kadmon. You're saying that he's the source. You're saying
Primordial is good. It also implies that from that origin is derived.
Right.
What comes out of it.
Okay, so now he says like this: the Hinegabi Adam. Explain now what the word Adam Kadmon means. Hinegabi Adam and why it's so critical to the whole picture. Simple and straight. It says Adam is created b'tselem and demus. Tzalmenu k'dmusenu of Elokus. That Adam below is made in the Tzelem and the shape and form of Lamaila. The Meshum Zeh Cholok Adam Chol Nevroim Shekol Melyenim V'Tachtenim. And that's why a human being is different than all other creatures, because he's kolol. He includes, encompasses both things from above and below. Every day of creation, you had things that were created from elyenim, let's say eir, or ikia. Or things created from below, like vegetation, or animals.
That's Lashon Midrash, or that's Lashon?
There's a Lashon HaMedrash, yeah. It's Lashon HaMedrash. I'm trying to think, does he mean Neshama and Guf? But no, it means both. That Adam has everything in it. Just like it says when he the Debisha took Offer from all over the world and made the Adam. So Adam is both Offer min Adama from all over. But he also has, the bottom line is personality. Everything about the Adam is everything. And all the levels, in the highest levels, Yeshna ba'adam l'fisha nasa b'tzelem l'dmusha l'mayla. You know what that means? You have everything in you. That's it. You don't need anybody else. Yeah. It's pretty empowering. The kamoyken yuvim b'chinas ak adam kadmon, and the same thing is understood with ak. Since Ak is called Adam Kadmon, shezehu ha'odam harishon she'ala b'machshava kavyachol ve'ein seif ha'kadmon l'chol akdumim. That's how he's teaching it. So Ak is the Adam harishon, the first Adam that arose in his will kavyachol ve'ein seif ha'kadmon l'chol akdumim. So Adam Kadmon doesn't just mean it's the first Adam; it's the Adam that arose in Kadmon l'chol, in the machshava of Kadmon l'chol akdumim. Harihu b'tzelem udmus. So this Adam, which was created, with this Adam.
Who is this Adam Arishan that he's referring to?
Well, he means Adam Arishan Kipshute, but also he means, he said Adam b'tzelem Elikim. So what's the first Adam? He's talking about the first place. Where's Adam? The first time Adam, first seer of Adam.
He's not talking about Taka, he's talking about the Elyon.
Yeah, it means everything. I mean, it's the Adam Arishan Lamata, as it says in Tageres HaKedesh, is Keil Kol and Shamas. Adam Arishan Lamata is Adam Arishan Lamayla. You see, it says Shazeo Adam. It doesn't say Adam Arishan. It says Shazeo Ha Adam Arishan. This is the first Adam. The first Adam. I think he means all the way in the Sherish in Machshava Gduma, like he says.
The word Adam Kadmon.
Yeah, exactly. So he says Ola b'machshava. So he's saying Adam Kadmon you can teach is the first Adam. You could also teach that the first Adam also arose in the Kadmon l'chol Gdumim be'ein seif. Be'ein seif ha'Kadmon l'chol Gdumim. What he said earlier, remember he said, when the first klal, he said, Ratzon ha'atzmos de'ein sof livnei tzimtzum b'inyan anos bo b'chinas machshava Gduma da'ak. In other words, why is this critical? I'll tell you why. Because you could say, okay, fine, the Adam Lamata can retrace its steps to the Adam Lamayla. But the Adam Lamayla, tzimtzum, and that's it goes nowhere. The answer is no. That Adam Lamayla is b'tzelem el-dmus of the things lufnei tzimtzum, all the way into Atzmos, all the way into the Kadmon l'chol Kadmonim. That's the meaning of Adam Kadmon. So, understand? In other words, whatever we say about the Adam Lamata, right, whatever we say, in other words, when we say God could Salmeinu could Museinu, he didn't just say he created us in the image of the Adam and Ak. He created Adam Ak in the image of Tzelem Admus, whatever that means in Lifnei HaTzimtzum. He doesn't say Lo Yadam Hu. No, but that's the memorial. If he went to say that, he could have said that. He said earlier, the Lashon Lo Yadam Hu. He brought that. The answer is it has both. That's what it means. That's the whole point of the interface. It's in Siyur of Adam, meaning in Siyur Shtal. In other words, no, it's Siyur has within it Lamayla Mitzir, if you want to put it that way. Yes, Adam has part of Lay Adam. You have to say that. That's the end of that's the whole story here. Or else, you don't have a Mutzah.
He uses Lashon Sheratzon Atzmos Dein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum.
Yeah.
You're talking about Atzmos Mamish?
Listen, whenever you say Atzmos, in Teira Shalom, he says, whenever you say Atzmos, you don't mean Mamish Atzmos, because you can't even talk about it. Let's put it this way. It's
Almeinik Museinu. What does that reflect? What does that include? B'shashe.
B'shashe goes into Atzmos itself, for sure, at the end of the day.
This Lashon, Ratzon HaAtzmos, the Ein Sof. He's talking about the Atzmos of Ein Sof, or he's talking about Atzmos, which is beyond Ein Sof.
But Pashtus Rotzen here is Atzmus and Lifnei Tzimtzum is more gilui. It's Eir Lifnei. That's Bechlal when you say Rotzen Atzmus. But remember, the Eir itself is Mushrish and Atzmus Mamish. So everything. Here he's talking Bechlalis. He's not referring to Atzmus as opposed to Eir. When you say Eir is Kodem Kadmusei.
So he's mechalik between Eir and Atzmos, or he's...
No, he's not. Here he's just talking Bechlal. He's not Lei Nichalei to go into that, I think.
I would say he's talking about
Lei
the
Nachus.
the Etzem of Ein Sof. As if he would say that...
Is that Etzem Eir?
Yeah.
Or is that Moir?
I think he wants to make the point that it goes all the way to the source, without going into the details. If you want to go into the details, then you're going to like how in the Sava Kodesh Baruch Hu is in Atzmus Mamish. He doesn't mention that here. So this ultimately is traced to Atzmus directly. But here, let's put it this way: Atzmus can still deny, can deny, what's the word? Like the president can still say, right? Can still say I was not veto. Can still say that, deny that his right. No. Deny his involvement.
Makes like a meeting.
Right. Right. That's the word. It's like it's not relevant here that right now. Right here is more relevant that it's rooted all the way in the Lifnei Tzimtzum. Because I'll tell you what the Chid Bichlal. Yeah, there's no question. Look. Earlier, I forgot where it was when he spoke about Loi Odemhu. Where was that? That was an Ak, yeah, not Silas. When he spoke about Loi Odemhu, look, the point here is the Mamutza definitely connects Odem to Loi Odem. There's no question about that. Also, all this discussion is what's the point of it all. That was the whole dilemma. How does the Odem connect to that? So right now he's doing it. He's traveling through Ak. Now here he just says Mamash Atzmus. So you have to say basically.
Unless he's referring to the Atzmos that he said before.
Yeah, but fine, but it's irrelevant because the bottom line is when you say B'tzalmeinu Kidmusenu.
Press unlock and dispense.
Look, in Chassidus you have the concept that when you say Adam Niver B'tzalmeinu Kidmusenu, you're saying tell him Dmus of Adam Elyon, which is Atzilus. That's B'derech Klal HaYitaych. But remember, there's also a thing called Atzilus D'Kvalos, which is Lifnei Tzimtzum, which is also a tzir of Adam.
But the kavanah of the Tachtenim is to be Atzmos.
Yeah. No, but I'm trying to say is that Atzilus, which is called Adam Elyon, is also B'chlolis is Atzilus Lifnei Tzimtzum. Atzilus D'Kvalos. That's the Sfiris HaGenuzos. Look. If Chassidus is miyusad that Esses Sfiris HaGenuzos are Lifnei Tzimtzum. Esses Sfiris HaGenuzos, there's no question, are not tangible spheres. They're potential spheres. But it's spheres right away means Siyur Adam. Chachma through Malchus. So you have Teferes Hanelam, you have Malchus the Ein Seif, you have all the spheres there in Sharsham. So in a sense, what happens is Adam Kadmon is where it takes shape, at least in the map, after the Tzimtzum. Lifnei Tzimtzum, it's in the spheres this. And Chassidus talks, not here, in other places, some of for sure, also Ayin Beis, that Esses Sfiris HaGenuzos, whether it's Keich HaGvul or Keich HaBli Gvul, all the different shittas, are ultimately rooted in the Rotzen, in Rotzen. And that goes all the way back to Eir. See, the problem is you can't just jump. Because Atzmus you cannot give any tzir to. There's no tzir Adam, there's no tzir Sfiris, there's no Rotzen even. It's not even Yechelis. In Atzmus, there's nothing that you can discuss. But Atzmus is Nesa Hakel. So he also has you don't say built in Mitzias Nimtza. But it has the ability to create or to emanate Eir. The highest level of Eir is Kadin Kadmusei. But that Eir, you say it's like Ki'ilu Kadma Heder. Because it has a source, but in essence it's a reflection of everything in Atzmos. But that's what you usually speak about as Eir. Then there's also the power of Gvul, the power of creating Yesh. When you speak Yesh and Eir. Adam Kadmon and Siyur is more in the gather of Yesh. Now he's speaking here that the Yesh also has a root in the deepest market, basically. We're not talking about Eir here. Because Eir is not Siyur. And you really need both. The real challenge is where does Eir and Yesh meet without destroying one another? If Eir is Pashut, without shape and form, And yesh is shape and form. How does shape and form meet no place of no shape and form? That's the ultimate dilemma in the whole Ayin Beis. It's clear. It's wherever you twist it.
And the answer is all the way up.
No, the answer is in Chochmas Tema. No. Bottom line is, you have to see it. Look at that. Look, everything was once Mushrish and Atzmus, and there was no difference between anything. Then the Eibishter, at least from our perspective, split it apart. The Tzimtzum created a perception of a Dasa and Das Tacht. There's two worlds now, and it's not a Dimyon. Bereshis Bara Elokim, not a Dimyon. It's a real world. Now think of it like this: you have two parts here that were once one, but they have millions of threads that were all seemingly ripped apart, and you have to start tying one to another. And the only way they can get together is you tie them all. So all the different Mitzrayim are basically tying the pieces. That's why you can't just say, "Oh, we have Asilis solved." You need Ak. You need everything has to be repaired here. It's like rebuilding a shattered structure. Yeah, and it has to be rebuilt, and that rebuilding will bring a gili that is even higher than what was there b'chatchila. That's another parsha. It's not just fixing what was broken. You're really you're reaching deepest places. So once you go out of Atzmos, that's where all this takes place. And Atzmos, this whole is a different story. But really, what it comes down to, Eir and Yesh meet, or Meitzel and Etzolim, all on different dimensions. So till here we're speaking how Chachma brings those two things. Here he's just moving it up a bit. We're explaining how the shadish of it is an Ak.
It was the Taich with Salmeinu Kidmuseno in the first.
So the first Dot Salmeinu Kidmuseno is that we Lamata, the Odom. Yeah.
So the Salmeinu Kidmuseno is what?
Is Nifnat Tzimtzum. The Rotzen for Elam is Nifnat Tzimtzum. And like he says, Min Al Yenim V'Tachteim, it has everything in it. The bottom line is, what he's really saying here, the Chiddush is that Odom has everything from Atzmus in them. Everything.
He said,
which means in your tziyur you have it all.
He said, Nasa Adam HaElyon,
Which is Ak.
Nasa Adam HaElyon was made with Salmeinu Kidmusenu.
Which is before the Kedem.
I'm trying to find it.
Yeah. But Pasha Salmeinu Kidmusenu, now the question is,
It made sense.
no, Salmeinu Kidmusenu of Ak, you have to say Salmeinu Kidmusenu is Esses Firas Agnuzis. That's what Pasha is the meaning. I think he said it earlier. Almost sure that he said it earlier. And Esses Firas Agnuzis Gufa then is B'Salmeinu Kidmusenu in the Keich Gvul or Keich Bli Gvul in Atzmus. Instead, it's all like that. But the key thing is, let's not be too smart. Every part needs to be dissected. This now goes Ak, not moving Alif Nat Tzimtzum. We just made the statement that it has it all. Because the real challenge is not just Haskolodik to understand it. It's really we should actually do it. And to do it is like the story with the Magid. So that takes time. To learn it, you could say, hey, one thing, I learned the whole thing, I got it all. There's Asiyah, there's Elam Adam Agashmi, there's Atzilus, Ak, Lifnei Atzimtzum, Atzmus. That's it. So what's the problem? Why are we here in Golos still? The answer is because to do it is not under Maisa. Right? That's what it is. Okay, Valken Kol Mashavatz, I'll call B'chinas Adam Zed. You see, again, it seems that both are the same. That even though it becomes an Hamshacha Atzmis B'chinas HaToka, I think he's really trying to say that an Ak. Let me just look again. It's a little difficult lashon, but because I think he's trying to say is what I think he's saying is that an Ak, the Hamshacha of Ak, is not the Hamshacha in Atzilus. It's Hamshacha that it's Atzmis and Hatoka. I think he's defining a different type of Hamshacha. But you see, when he starts with Yesh B'zeh HaHamshachas, so you
from the lower level.
It's removed from what's below it. Yeah, but the lashon Yesh B'zeh Hamshachas, the Hamshachas lashon Rabim, not sure what it means. Maybe he means the difference between Metzach and the Havolim. Anyway, when I read it, I also it's not like anyway. So anyway, V'imei Yeshu B'chum.
Really, when you get Ak itself. Where
do you see that?
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, good.
So
Yeah.
If he has to mention the Hamshacha for whatever reason, he's trying to bavara that it's Hamshacha Asmus is not.
I understand. What's some Perek Samachvav or Amad Samachvav? Oh. Also, the whole sugi of Ak is look at Perek Kuf Samach Dalad. 123. Page Kuf Chav Gimel. Okay, fine. And also look, if you're already looking, look at Oskuf Samach Dalet.
Also the beginning.
At the bottom of the page. Pedekuf Samach Dalet. He takens it actually here, so that means it's relevant. Let me just see something. You see, in the summary we're going to do, this you have to tie them all together, because you almost have to write a piece on Ak from the different places. Don't get so overwhelmed. This is what you're going to be doing, yes.
We have a new recruiter. Explaining Ak.
And the Sia, but Hashab, oh, by the way, Lang sent me all the stuff, all the memorandum from them. I have the whole thing. Yeah. See? So here, look at the last page, bottom of page Shin Chav Ches. That's where he explains the whole meaning of Ak as a mamutza. So a few prokim. Please. Also page Shin Lamed Daled. Look at this of Oskuf Samach Vav, mamash the beginning. Kuf Samach Vav, Perek Kuf Samach Vav. Page Shin Lamed Daled. Yeah. Wow. Okay, let's move on here. Yeah. Dvarim pshutim, yeah? I mean, every line here is like, wow. So, you see, that's the vart. Remember, it's still a mamutza. Even though it's removed, it's still a mamutza. Like we discussed elsewhere, like it says elsewhere, the atik, even though it's removed, and also primis abba primis atik. Remember chochmah. And here he takes v'ayim mashin is baraleil pedikov samach dalet ubeprokim shakli is bein hamamutza da'ak. So really, he's concluding because there the big dilemma was that what's the mamutza of ak when you have the mamutza of the kav and atzilus. So that was the answer. There was it's klal and prat, not between elikus blig vul and gvul or elikus and velt. Klal and prat. And here he's bringing it all together. Because Atzilus Mamutza is rooted in the Mamutza of Ak. So it all comes together. In other words, Ak is more than just Klal Prat at the end of the day. It actually connected you to Lifnei HaTzimtzum also. It's also Klal Prat. We'll close B'chinas HaTev, Tikun HaKol B'chinas Ak. So this was just an introduction to explain Ak. Because remember, we're explaining how Adam Matachten is rooted in Adam Elyon, Atzilus is rooted in Ak. So now he's saying, so everything is in Ak. So calls b'chinas hateva tikun akol hu b'chinas Ak, hu mib'chinas Ak. They're all rooted from Ak. It's not discussed in many places in Chassidus how Teyu and Tikun come from Ak. By the way, it usually says Ak, and then there's the Teyu and Tikun, and then you go weiter. Here he's actually tracing Teyu and Tikun into Ak with the from the Apid Eitz Chaim. And now it goes like this. I'm sorry. Tohu m'shem sag. He's repeating. Shem havolim da'ak. So Tohu again. What's the root of Tohu? Is the shem sag in Ak. No, we had the whole thing. There's ab sag banu ma. So some shem sag. What is shem sag? The havolim of Ak. That's the havolim of the ventricles. Well, how would you translate hevel? A ventricle? A orifice?
Not the way we were attaching it till now. Somehow we were attaching hevel the actual
like breath.
Breath. Yeah.
But he says
not
the hal. Yeah, the hal. But yeah, chol is an orifice. But you're talking the cavities. But the cavities of the nose, of the ears, and the mouth. That's clear.
That's the chol.
He's calling havolim. He's saying havolim the ezen chaytim bepeh. How would you translate havolim the ezen chaytim peh? I know.
But something that's coming out.
But 1 second. In Eitz Chaim says this lashon havolim the ezen chaytim peh. How would you translate that lashon? Forget about anything else. Forget about the mime. Havolim the ezen chaytim peh has to be the cavities.
It's the emptiness within the cavity.
Yeah, because it's yeah. The fact is, in other words, when you look at a human head. Besides the eyes, we're not talking about the eyes. There are two here, and one thing. There's basically 5 holes, essentially 5 entries, 5 cavities. That's what it comes down to. The truth is, the nose is also the sinuses. So it's also cavities. But
It's mostly in the skull.
fine, but I'm talking about, that's what he's talking about. That's havolim here for sure. He means havolim means, must mean chalolim. Yeah. No, you could, look, remember the ears, you could say the nose and the mouth breathe. The ears don't breathe. Interesting, you know what he says in Eitz Chaim? That when you cover your ears completely, he says it. You'll hear a sound because there's a hevel going through there. He says that in Eitz Chaim.
The doctors became ENTs. Ear, nose, throat.
That's right.
It's really good.
That's right.
They connect.
Adam Kadmon. Ear, nose, throat, that's excellent.
ENTs, yeah.
It used to be, when I was a kid, they were ear, eye, nose, and throat.
Okay, because anayim, right, the anayim are not in the sag. They're sag doctors, not ab doctors.
It's true, though.
They're Tohu doctors, not Tikun doctors. Let's put it that way. Okay, fine. So look at this. Now he says like this. Tikun hu mishem ma. Remember hachodesh shema mitzchadag. That's rooted in the forehead of ak. Umavur b'geres hakedesh b'kuntas achan da lo havin mashu koz b'pritz chayim. And in the Geras HaKedesh he explains, he explains the Shem Sag u'muprimi Sag. Shema hayetzim ma'metzach hu ha'orel avad. Shem Sag is the primius avak. Because the orifice, these cavities, I don't like orifices, I don't like that word.
Hollow.
Ventricles.
The entrance to the cavity.
Right. They come from primius Sag, because they go inwards.
Oh, yeah.
The metzach, the ma that comes from the metzach is only a reflection, because the metzach is an external, you only see the external, you can't enter, so to speak. V'chein hu be'etz chaim, so the Geras HaKedesh, same thing says in Eitz Chaim, the havolim, this is the Eitz Chaim I was quoting before. The havolim, the ezen chetem peh, hein havolim mamish. They're mamish,
Open
canals.
Channels.
Yeah, canals may be a great word, yeah. Mashenkin Shem Mashem Memetzeldak ain't kan hevel mamish. That's what it says in Eitz Chaim. There's no hevel.
That's why I'm having trouble with this. It's totally blocked.
But you're going to see,
You don't even have a
but you're going to see there's a whole perek here that talks about how much it actually shines. That a metzach is unbelievable gili. He's going to say it's even it's a shem ab.
Yeah.
It's a higher gili even than the havolim. Good. Umakomo kemavur be'etz chayim. Now goes the other side. The shem ma hanal u'b'china shem ab da'ak. Shem ma, even though it's only ha'ara, it's rooted in Shem Ab, the highest. Shehu Eid Elyon be'en arech l'gab b'china Shem Sag. Shem Ab, remember we talked about Mila Yudin, is Eid Elyon is a higher energy that's completely Shlei Berech, infinitely apart, higher than Shem Sag. K'mesh tekasa be'etz chaim shar, time Nekudas Taganesis, Perek Aleph. I actually looked into there, that's where I'm coming from. That what? The b'shem ab sheboy ein lanu reshus l'daber. The shab ab we don't even have permission to talk about, and we're talking about atzmos. And actually, you want to hear something interesting? Which says in Eitz Chaim. I never saw this before. You know when you say you speak about things in Elikus and you say, but it's only l'shachich ha'ezen. It's only for our ears. So he says, why do you say l'shachich ha'ezen, not l'shachich ha'anayim?
Right.
He says because ab is the enayim, and we can't even talk about it. So even the shachris ha'ezen, even what we talk about mishalim is only for the ear.
Sag.
Sag,
Yeah.
yeah, sag, yeah. So he says that lashon l'shachris ha'ezen is also b'dik. Yeah, interesting. Ab, I think he says ab is metzach and enayim. I think also, but no, the enayim is something else. I forgot already.
So here he's saying
So in the
something
Neshus
coming out of the Metzach is lower than something that's coming from either Eizukaitim or Peh.
No, I just read the opposite. That even though Shema at the end is only Ha'ara, but it's coming from rooted from a higher place than where the Havolim are rooted. No, but that's common. He's going to explain this. This is what this Maimer is about. This is what I said before. V'ayde yichud ab da'ak im shem de sag da'ak. Remember we spoke about the yichud when ab meets sag. That's the Chodesh. That's why it's called Chodesh, because it's a birthing like. It's the yichud of Ab and Sag, that's what he says in Eitz Chaim, that creates Shema HaChodesh, which is the power of Tikun, to create Tikun, the bittul that creates this. He's going to explain. This is not stopping it. This is just the technical, this is the Kabbalistic language.
So the Akka, what we're going to do later. It's the Akka, what we're going to do later.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so from here now he starts an explanation. Let me just give a summary here. The explanation now he's going to explain, number one, Hevel HaDibur, Hevel HaPeh, the power of that. In next Perek, that's this Perek Samar Gimel. In the next Perek Reish Samar Dal, he's going to explain the gili that comes from a metzach. And then he's going to explain how could something so external, like just plain flesh, express something so profound, which is going to explain the mamutza that ma and ab create. Because on one hand you could say it's a beautiful example, because you could, remember in the interface we're talking about, we're trying to connect Elam Hazeh, our world, our universe, with godliness. So as long as you have to go out of your own seer, like, out of your own shape and form, you can understand. But if you can find expressions of godliness literally on the forehead of a human being, like a person like us, that when you're besimcha, your face looks different, that's an example that Elokus penetrates even on our terms. So it's a very powerful. See, if it's ezen chetem peh, you could say, okay, yes, when we speak passionately, it reflects nafshe yotze bedabre. Your speech reflects your spirit. You could say that's still a spiritual thing. But if you can physically see in a face, even though it's only a reflection and only external, but it's reflecting the deepest levels of pleasure or chokhmah, that's a very powerful interface. Yeah, that's what he's going to say. Yeah, that's chokhmah and terepanov. It's the forehead primarily. So what he's going to do now is contrast the havolim of sag, that's tohu, the root of tohu, and the metzach, which is the root of ma of tikun. And of course the conclusion is that tikun repairs tohu. And Tikun has a deeper root than that's the basic nukuda here. You want to just? I know this was learned already, but maybe we should just. Was everyone here last week? Huh? You were?
I'm only coming up on every once in a while, so you just do what you do.
I mean, I would just roll. I would just go here straight, if with everyone's permission. Is that good? Were you here in the shurim on Friday, Thursday, the other days?
I was here, I was half hour.
Okay, you're half here too now. So which half?
No, on the other half.
The other half, okay. Okay.
Are you going to do everything?
Why not? Were you here?
No.
I mean, do everything. Everything is a lot. When you say everything is a big word, my friend. I was going to begin there, but this is dense stuff. So, huh? I could read here. I could go pretty. This needs less explanation. Huh? Yeah, let's go. Okay, but I'm just saying. Be the Indian. Think of it now. He finished the thing here. Now goes the whole explanation. I'm ready. I'm reading from here. Even though, yeah.
So yours, Simon.
Where are you starting from?
You missed something. I knew you would smile from this.
Okay.
The bottom line is that if the metzach of a person, which is only air, only flesh,
right, that's what he says
and this
next also.
can be a reflection of the deepest things,
Yeah.
that's a real expression of the interface. That on our terms in this world, you have the deepest.
He brings the word
Yeah.
in the next.
That's why I said it.
first
Yeah,
time.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, so be the Indian. He's gonna. So now he's gonna explain. It said the hevel hadibur, which is I don't think he speaks about the hevel of the chetim and the znaim.
No.
Only the hevel of peh. Well, be the Indian dini and the rein b'muhus. We see b'muhus hevel hadibur. We see now hevel would be this. Yeah, this. Yeah. Okay, fine. It means everything. That's all. Hevel is we determine cavities. What do we say? Cavities, canals, right? Channels. And hevel also means breath. Right?
It means cavities. In the cavity, you have the
Okay.
what creates the cavity, and then you have the actual hevel inside the cavity.
I mean, a whole Taylor language, you'd say holes.
Professor.
The holes in your head.
A jastra?
Yeah.
No.
Nostrils.
You have in the
It's
chiddush,
not hevel.
I haven't seen that since.
Hevel is
I was in
what's
Yeshiva
in the hole.
years ago.
What fills the hole.
Okay.
What's not
Emptiness.
What,
How
yeah,
many
Emptiness.
definitions he has for hevel?
Dili boy, hezek boy.
Okay, so cavity is a good word.
What's the hezek coming from? From the impact or from the hevel outside?
Okay, but 1 second. When we say hevel hadibur, 1 second. When you say hevel hadibur, what do you mean? You're not saying the emptiness of dibur. Hevel hadibur
breath.
is
The breath is
My
Okay.
love the word hevel as being air is we have a cavity, but then the air is a connecting between the inside and the outside.
in the Eitz Chaim I said before. Eitz Chaim he says when you cover your ears, you hear some type of like ruach.
Voices in your head.
Yeah, that you hear even when you don't cover your ears. But the point I'm making, because I guess the word in English, in Hebrew, you need 5 words to explain a word. In English, to translate a word in Hebrew, you need 5 words in English, and they say and 20 words in French.
Hevel,
Hevel avolim. Okay, then it means as if it's lady, it's a pust. Yeah.
Hevel.
Yeah. Well, look, when we talk about the shaitin v'shaitin tin l'cha b'chol sharecha, the shachal atei, the Sivsikain says it means the sheva sharim, which are the 2 the nose, that brings 2, 4, 5, and the 2 eyes, the 7. Yeah. Okay, so we see b'muchus hevel adibur in the muchus of the hevel adibur, which is the breath of speech. Shehu me'esh mayim ruach gashmi haba mechitzenius hamidish belev. Yeah, because b'chlal when you speak about hevel like any ruach, it's esh mayim ruach really. Huh? Omar. So me esh mayim ruach. Esh means there's some warmth there. Mayim is like some moisture, and ruach is the air. In other words, which is correct. It's not. It's just defining how it's rooted. Hagashmi haba mechitzenius hamidish belev. V'nasa kel murgish, and it comes from the external levels of the emotions of the heart. That's interesting how he teaches hevel hadibur. So it's the emotions manifesting in eish mayim ruach, and that comes down into a kel murgish, a audible sound.
You're using that as an example of an interface between Ruchnis and Gashmis.
Yeah, b'chlolis, yeah, but more. But more specifically, but this he's talking about Shem Sag, which is the havolim of chetim of peh of ak. That's what he's really talking about. You understand what I just said?
Yeah.
That's the technical. No. The meaning behind it is that it is a connection. Of sure, it is a channel between the 2. Yeah. So that's what he's going to explain. So it comes na kelmer v'yetzer b'chinas pirud gomor la'avir l'chutz, and it emerges, it exits from the person who's speaking, pirud gomor, completely separate, meaning you hear the sound outside of the person. The sound is no longer one with the person. You can even record it. We have here a living testimony. Huh? Well, he's going to explain it all. 1 second, not there yet. First, he's talking the physical. Let's talk. He's right now talking remember, everything to understand the spiritual, you have to understand the physical. So we have to understand the marshal here, or the way it's manifest by us. So bottom line is, remember, part of the Aveda is that we, in our physical speech, should be aligned to the way it's beruchnis. So you need to really understand the detail of it. It's not just a marshal. A tzaddik is bedugma shel maila, which means that when he speaks, it's the hevel of Elikus, hevel of the Elam Yisraelim speaking. Yeah, in that sense. But even more than that, it's the way it's aligned exactly the same way. Or like a metzach will reflect the way it is a metzach and ak. The bottom line is there's the quintessential man, the way a human being is supposed to be, the perfect man. How would he be? What would he look like? So Hevel B'Shom members of this. That means Pirud Gomer. That it's very important here because it's not longer part of you. It's not something staying inside of you. It's completely outside, separate from you, and it went out to the Avir L'chutz, to the ear outside of you. A sound was heard, so a sound emerged and became something outside. It's dibur. You can't call it pirud legamri. It's pirud gomor, but not pirud legamri. You can't say complete pirud. That's legamri. When you build something, let's say we go and we craft something physical. You build a chair, you build a box. So that you push it, create something that's completely separate. That's Maisa. Dibur, as he's going to explain, Machshava Dibur Maisa. Dibur is a levush nifrid, but it's still connected, so it's nifrid. So he says, Mashenken Hevel Dibur Hare Bob Zulas Shehu Kemohuse Bob Zulas Shehu Kemohuse has a rosh ain't a nifrid legamri. Mashenken Hevel Dibur, the sound that comes from words. Hare Bob Zulas Shehu Kemohuse has a rosh ain't a nifrid. What does that mean? Hare Bob Zulas Shehu Kemohuse. So it comes to another person. Shehu Kemohuse.
Yeah, not like Maisa that goes into
Kemohuse of the person who's speaking. Shariba bezula shehu kemohuse has a rosh and nifrid legamri.
Mashenken Maisa goes into wood, which is not the same.
Why is it relevant that he's talking about, or
There's a difference between Gomer and Legamri.
you want to bring out the gashmitic part of
Between
this,
Gomer and Legamri.
the physical
Ain't is
thing,
Gomer,
the deeper
it's
thing,
Legamri.
different, yeah, different. What's in the gate that he's coming to say this Hamidah Shabbalah?
I never realized it.
Why did you say a Hevel Dibur? What's supposed to? Or is that what it's trying to tell you? That says that.
Yeah, because I think and I don't remember in other places, but I think what he wants to say here is that it's an external thing, and nevertheless, he wants to say it's an external thing, but it's rooted and connects to a deeper inner turn. So Chitzenius Amidus is remember the question that it comes like this. Where does taka physical sound? I don't know the medical way it comes, but how does taka physical sound come? There's no question it comes from.
Deeper than.
No, they do say it does come from Hevel Halev. You say sometimes Hevel Halev creates the Hevel Hadibur. I guess it comes through also the lungs, right?
Obviously, the air comes from the lungs.
But that's breathing. But when you speak,
there's a wetness that comes from the
right.
heart.
I mean, it's a complicated thing. It's not so simple. How does actual?
From the heart goes into the lungs.
No, so I'm saying, yeah, that's what he's going to speak about. Yeah.
More than just the Hevel of the gashmitic thing. You're bringing Geruchis into Gashmitic.
Well, I'm saying he's going to whole pedic on this. That's exactly what he's going to lead to. Anyway, but here he wants to bring out this side. First, we bring in he's starting from the outer level. That dibur goes outside of. Here he's pointing out that dibur is a in of pirut. Shehu kemohuse. As a rosh ein nifrid legamri. So it's made. Yeah. So it comes to another person. The sound, the voice, kemohuse. So that's proof that it's not nifrid legamri. That's not completely separate from the source. Yeah. Well, listen. As they say, does a tree make a sound? When nobody's here, nobody's listening. V'gam shebedibur yesh meprimis achayis. He's still in the Maimon Musger. V'gam that also the bedibur yesh meprimis chayis hanefesh opel hakiruv azulas elov kamosh yizbar. And also in dibur you see it has from the primis chayis hanefesh. That's from the internal energy of the nefesh of the person. Opel hakiruv, and it actually brings somebody closer. A love. Azulas he brings another person closer. In other words, you can attract someone. You draw them to you through speaking warmly or kindly.
But he's talking about the gashmistic part of it.
Yeah.
It's not about the words. He's talking about the sound. He's talking about the sound now. He's talking about the teichen of what he's saying.
Both.
Together.
The sound is a nifrid. He said the sound is pirud gomer. In this parentheses, by warning, pirud gomer, not complete pirud, legamri, because it's still connected to things. First, the sound is kemohuse, even when it comes, it's not like a siya, which is completely separate. And also, when you speak, you're able to bring someone closer. So it's also two proofs that it's not completely separate. He's just qualifying from the person, from the raw source. He says it is separate, complete separate. Sound is outside of the source, outside of you. Not like machshava, for example. Thought is not outside of you. But he's by warning that it's not completely outside, because the fact is it's still connected. Because the two things. Number one is it's of the same personality. And number two, it actually can bring someone closer to you. So it's not like...
Not because of what he's saying, because you hear someone...
What is the problem? I'm not...
Yeah, it's very simple. When you see it as opposed to asiya, it's very simple. As opposed to asiya...
You can't bring it, it's not the same as you can't bring it back. Once it goes out, you can't bring it back.
Fine.
But the Eibishter says...
Fine, right? V'gam ha-maisa pe'el kiruv k'tzas. Is also bavan. Even maisa, when you build something. Also, can affect some form, to some extent, small form of connection. Bahadover hanase. Some form of connection in this thing that he created. Shahariya Odam Chas al Ma'aseh Yodav. We see a person cares about what they created. It's not stam, complete external, that he cares about it. So in other words, when you build something, you care about it and it affects you. So it also pales some kiruv. V'gam poel ili b'hanase, and it also can affect, elevate the person who made it. When a big person, a great person, does something,
In the object, not
it goes both ways. Yeah. Oh, so first Adam Chasam Ma'aseh Yodav, right? That's Dover Hanase. Yeah, both ways. No, I'm sorry. Gam Ma'aseh Pel Kiruv Ksaz Bahadover Hanase. In other words, it's not just that it affects the person who made it; that the thing that's made has an investment and is a reflection of the person who made it because he cares about it, and it also elevates it, the thing that was made, because when a great person does something, like if a simple person does something, and a great person does it, the great person gives it more prestige.
Yeah.
But that by Ma'aseh, it's only because in the Pa'ula, in the action, there's a reishim, there's some residue, something remains from the Keich HaPeil, from the person who's building, who's acting. That means that the Keich Peil is separate from him, but it's still in there. In other words, there's something in the action, in the thing that was made, the Ma'aseh, that has something, but it's completely outside of him. But Dibur is not separate at all from him. So bottom line is it's like this. Machshava, he's going to say in a second. Well, let's read it, then I'll explain it. After the Maimar Musgar. So Dibur is levush hanifrit. It's a garment, 3 levushim. So for example, machshava would be like your skin. You cannot separate from a person. Clothing is like Dibur. A mice is something outside that you build. They're all from you. They all have one common denominator. They're 3 expressions of a human being. And there's no other way you can express yourself. Either it's thought, speech, or action. The difference is action, as he says, you build something, it's outside of you, but it has part of you there, but it's completely outside. Dibur goes out, travels outside of you, but it's connected to you. And machshava, as he's going to say, is completely connected, doesn't even travel outside. And also all part of the interface, because it's all, remember, machshava is closest to the inner you, mais is outside of you, and you try to bridge them all. So imagine if we didn't have the power to speak, we wouldn't have the power to interface, to connect. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah.
And if you learned other Maimorim besides Shayichud, you find connections there too.
Good, but he gets the Shayichud.
No,
Hey, it's Tes Kislev. Tomorrow's Tes Kislev.
right.
Can't make fun of Shmukla now. You're going to have to wait till the
That's what the
Mitzvah.
person's called without it. This is the interface.
Du das Kissel kommt bald, huh?
The person's
Der
called
besagt,
without
als Jud Kissen, dat we maken, ach, laat is van
it.
Jud.
This is the interface.
In Chelik Vav, in Kute Sichas, he explains why Medaber, not masculine, because he's able to go out of himself. Yeah.
The connection of both.
Here also, by the way, he brings up a mile of Dibur over Machshava to a certain extent.
Well, Dibur is definitely, they're all interface, everything interface at the end of the day.
The higher from the speech,
Look, you do.
you could tell if a person is lying or if he's nervous, and you could also tell what vitamins and minerals he's missing.
You could also tell if he's smart or an idiot.
That you can tell when he's quiet too.
Not always.
That you tell on the Metzach.
You know,
Not always. Depends.
Zabiel once was praying with us and said, it's a siyog l'chach mishtike, which is like, that silence is a siyog, is like a support, I guess, of chachmas. He says, why does Chazal reveal the secret? Now fools will also know the secret, so they'll also use. He says, as they can sich nicht einhalten. Even if they know it, they still don't know how to be silent. They can't control themselves. So that's Chachem Mahu Eimer. Chaz v'sholom.
I got the man.
God, man, it wasn't. I was talking to Bichlal.
I know. I took it before.
וכידוע, הפרש בין מחשבה לדיבור ללבוש, המחשבה ללבוש המיוחד. It's known the difference between thought and speech to the levush of machshava, the garment of machshava. Remember, it's all garments, not keiches. It's not Chochma Bina Das Chesed. Garments you can always change. You can change Levusha Machshava. You can't change your Chochma Bina Das Chesed, what it says. That's your being.
You can change your Levusha Machshava.
You can change what you think about it. It's a Levush. What's going in it. V'hainu, I'll tell you why I'm saying this, because I remember the first time learning the Levushim, I couldn't for years, I couldn't figure out. It was Machshava and Chochma. I used to ask all the Klotzkash until somebody told it to me. So I remember registering that Keich HaChochma is not Keich HaMachshava, it's two separate things. One is wisdom, and machshava is only when you're thinking about it. Do you have a machshava? Chochma you have even when you're not thinking. Even when you're stupid, even when you're saying
all the spheres you can't change. You can redirect them. You can
spheres, but levushim, right? Levushim.
I'm saying chochma is a sphere, so you can't change it.
Correct, but but when you're young, you don't to tell somebody who doesn't know the difference between keiches and levushim that it's a sphere. It doesn't help. It's like
no, I understand. I'm not saying that. No, it's a misconception by people that are not only young.
It's a faculty, yeah. Well, just for the record, the first time we learned Tanya, with Rabbi, so it was ridiculous. We didn't know anything, and remember he came and tested us, and he asked me, "What's the difference between Chachma Bina Das?" I had no clue. I was like 15. We were playing around. So I said, "Chachma hebt zucham mit aches, Bina mit Beis, und Das mit a." He says, "Du gehst eine größere Maske."
Can you translate that?
I mean, he made fun. Well, not exact. From that, I don't know. From
that was how the Chabad movement became.
No, he meant I was innovative. I was innovative. And you don't know. Don't ask about those years learning Chassidus. When you learn the Maimer for the Bar Mitzvah, it says about much Chassidus. You understand? I learned it with my son. It's a very deep Maimer, the Bar Mitzvah. It's very hard Maimer. You don't understand the answer to the question. Anyway, Chasna Maimer is also very hard.
So what's the Klotzkash?
So someone told me, why is the Chasna Maimer so hard? They said, it's a preparation to know that marriage isn't going to be easy.
Doesn't say the...
It's Yuchud Zun und Setif in Yanim. It's not very posh.
The other verse is for Machakim.
Right, Machkim, yeah.
So it implies that you could get more Chochma can be changed.
I have to tell you. No, excellent. No. I'm glad you brought it up. But someone was by dollars by the Rebbe. I don't think they're going to do a gem on it. But he asked the Rebbe the following. He says that the Shidduch is working out, thank God. It was clear that he wanted, Chassidus in his home, and she came from a Lidvisher family. He says, we resolved all the issues. The only issue remains whether we should have a picture of the Rebbe hanging on the wall. He's asking the Rebbe what to do. So the Rebbe says, the first day in Eretz Yisrael, you go into Israel, and it says, Avira Eretz Yisrael Machkim. So you come there, you'll become wiser, you'll know what to do. Which is a double-edged answer. Which made us think like this. What happens if a person doesn't have Chachma in the first place? Does Israel affect him, and then when you leave, does the Chachma stay in Israel or go with you?
You want to say like it just brings out the...
there's things you buy in Israel, those cans of Israel Avi, right? And you open it up, you feel wise for a moment. But the Rebbe once said by Fabreng, someone got drunk and he was like out of control. The Rebbe said, put him. The Rebbe said, Adela Yada means you have to have Yada before you have Adela Yada. If you don't have the Yada, Adela Yada, it's going to...
No, later on we spoke about that when a person takes on, what's it called?
No, they're definitely schoolless. For example, even foods you eat that that refine you and make your chachma flow better.
Don't rely on it.
Yeah.
Don't deal with the Caleb.
Maybe it's, I don't know, whatever. But another thing, the fact is, but you guide to mitzvah, Giyas HaMeach makes the refinement of the expansion of the Kalim definitely opens channels, for sure. But can you get more chachma than what your potential would be? That like it's a bracha, not a tefillah. But there are. The Rebbe speaks about it, actually. Now I remember. Meichav libe zakim nas elef palm kacha through tzedakah. The Rebbe says the Minsk Pshute that through 1 hour you can achieve what others take what would take regularly 1,000 hours. So there are
That's
They haven't applied it. They haven't said how to learn. Yeah.
Imagine how dumb they'd be.
right, exactly.
No, but the second thing is
And you still need the hour.
Right.
The point is, yeah, but that's not for it. He spoke about it before with the midas. You cannot, just like you can't change the color of your eyes, you cannot change the personality of the keiches. But and does anybody live up to all the potential to say that we already use the entire chachma? And like we always do say, even a rebbe, he's born with potential. He's born with potential chachma that's made it, but he has to learn. It doesn't happen automatically. Story with the Tzemach Tzedek, where he said he should, when the Alter Rebbe wanted to give it to him matana, and he didn't want to take it, he wanted to struggle. So then he realized he should have taken it, there's always more. Okay.
the same thing with Buddha. If you go on Mazal Haidim, so then we redirect it, so you should become a sheikhet or a male, whatever.
Redirect it, and you could also discipline it. You can zbirur hamidus. You don't have to act. You can't change its fundamental nature. But he spoke about klishus hamidus.
Wasn't me.
No, just because you're about Buddha doesn't mean you have to be Buddhist all the time.
You're gonna play.
There is, you could ma'ishal ta'ala. Okay, so he goes like this. The difference between the machshava and dibur. Being that machshava thought is a levush ruchni, as opposed to dibur, which is a levush gashmi, because it has a physical sound, right? In ruach, yeah. In machshava, it's a levush ruchni shebe'erech ha-seichel. It's much closer to seichel. It's relative to seichel. Seichel is, of course, sublime. Seichel is a spirit. Doesn't have any tangible. So machshava is closer to that. Machshava seichel upnimis hamidus, and the internal part of the midas, as opposed to dibur. The imi yesha machshava gam kenesius. Now he goes also machshava. Now the other extreme, just like Maisa has a part of you, machshava also has asius, has letters.
Wouldn't machshava has mayim and eish and so on. And there's no ruach. That's all.
Okay, that's fine. But
Ruach
that's
is
more. That's
external,
okay. So that's more. Yeah.
I'm saying there's eish and mayim for sure. The gashmi for sure.
He doesn't say it here, but fine. It doesn't matter. It's still more sublime. Still more subtle.
No, it's closer to the keli. It's not. It's only
Closer to the air. No, what do you mean closer?
No, it's part. I'm saying it's right. The seichel is part of the chacham, much closer. It's a tighter fit.
That's what he says. The imhe yesha machshava gam ken asis, even though machshava is also letters, b'kol makim harem asis dakim v'ruchnim sheberach haseichel v'amidus. Even though machshava is also made up of words and letters, but these asis are dakim. They're subtle and spiritual, and sublime would be the right word. Sheberach haseichel v'amidus, because they're relative to the seichel v'amidus, which are also like, an idea and a feeling are sublime.
The difference between Chesenius and Midas and Pneumius and Midas. How would you? One is an expression, and one is that's a midah. I mean, that's what you want to say.
He doesn't explain it here, but Pashtus, I would say it's really right talking about the root of it. As soon as you talk about something more, let's put it this way: in dibur, you cannot libur lepuma legalia. Dibur, you can't really express the deepest part of your feelings, and machshava, you could relate more to your inner feelings. That's how I would understand it. So it's more like that. It's not. And that's why machshava, thought, flows all the time. Flows.
Yep.
The kashem she'er haseichel, hu tamid, just like the er haseichel is always there, the energy of seichel. They're always there. Person is always thinking. Because they're united, they're one. Like you said, levush hamiyuchad. It's a garment that's one. So as a result of machshava being more subtle, it also flows all the time. And the second thing is that another machshava has asis, but the asis are dakim, and the gili of machshava is only to yourself. Nobody can read your mind.
Yeah, what is that? I mean, is there any truth to that? When you look at the metzach of somebody, you could be able to read his mind.
First of all, we're talking pashtus. Even if you could, it's not. Let's talk about. Forget about somebody else. We're talking about ourselves. When you think, it's yourself. It's not expressing to someone else.
That's a
That's what Pashtus.
You could read someone's mind.
So hold on a second. When you speak, you're communicating. That's Pashut. Now you ask a Zaytik question whether some people can enter into your seat. Even if they could, it still doesn't mean Akshav is not Latzmei.
If they could, where does that fit in what he's saying?
No, because bottom line, again, that's a side thing. That's a side show. The Eibishter could read your mind. So that means Akshav is not Latzmei, and Dibur is Lezulas. It means that someone may have such a power, but that means he has a power to go into Latzmei. It's not like, doesn't mean that's Lezulas.
Akshav is Latzmei is better than Dibur, but in itself, it could be Lezulas also. For somebody else who could read it, in other words.
Into mind reading here? I mean,
No.
how often is that an issue? I mean,
Because we're talking about Metzach. Metzach is a gilui.
we're not talking about Metzach yet. We'll get to Metzach when we get to Metzach.
We're talking about Metzach, not talking about this. Metzach is saying that with the Metzach you could see.
It sounds like you're involved in someone that's reading your mind. You're not
Not
done.
at all.
You know?
Not at all. No, it says like Mishlat Tzadik.
First of all, Metzach, I don't think you said it's the mind reading. Metzach is you see the Chochmas Adam. You don't even know what Chochmet is. I don't think you can know. No. And Metzach also, you don't see what wisdom it is. You just see there's a glow. You don't know what the glow is from.
You can't read the mind of a Rebbe, but you see there's a glow there.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on.
That's a sound there. That's because
he has an X-ray. It's an X-ray.
Or also he's much smarter. He's much smarter. So, you know what you little kids thinking because you're much smarter than this. That's nothing. It's an under. It's nothing to do with.
Okay, let's go on here. The Esis HaMachshava hen kechemer l'tzura. Because the letters of Machshava are... I just want to explain, when you say letters of Machshava, people often ask, why is it that when I don't think always in words. You know, sometimes you think with words, sometimes you don't. Like if you're preparing a speech, or you say, what am I going to say? You could say in your mind, I'm saying, you know, before you say it, you review it in your mind. But the fact is, even if you're not margish, even if you don't feel letters, you're always thinking in some... Because letters doesn't always mean tangible physical letters, like in speech, A, B, C.
By the way,
it means there's kalim. As soon as you have conscious awareness of your thoughts, there has to be some form of language.
So even when you're talking about visualization, that's also...
It has to have, because there has to be... Because conscious... Yeah, you know what's not Gedra Esis? Unconscious. As soon as you're conscious, there has to be some tangible. It's a tool. It's just a very subtle tool. Mm-hmm. So so it may not take the form like some people say. I think in English. I think in Hebrew. I think in Yiddish. You know, it's not always it's not always takes on the shape of letters. I mean, the best example really given for it is, he doesn't give it here, but there's an example I think in Tafresh Nun or somewhere. No, somewhere else. Is like, think of it like let's take kalim. Let's take actual kalim. You take a cup. So a cup, when you put water into it, that's like maisa. Imagine the cup is submerged in water. So you don't even see the keli. So Esis and Machshava are so submerged in the ideas that you don't sense the kelim. When you write them, they're very tangible. When you speak them, they're less tangible. It's like that.
Accepted by secular...
Yeah, for sure.
I remember seeing something
this
like
guy,
this
Noam Chomsky, major linguist. It's the other guy, Pinker in Harvard. Mm-hmm. These are major scholars and linguists. It's very, very similar to this idea. First of all, it goes it's more than that. It says Esis mushish in the nefesh. That's why a child doesn't need a lot of time to learn how to speak. You know, to learn how to do anything, you need time. How does a child learn how to speak so quickly when they get their age? Because there has to be some language inside of them.
But there's a machlekes about it.
Hold on, 1 second. Hold on. 1 second. It doesn't. I'm not talking whether it's English or French or Spanish, because that depends on the parents. But there's Esis means that there is a child. Everyone is born with the ability to communicate. You just need a few years to develop the ability to do so. But in other words, within you, there's not just ideas. There's also communication of it. Nefesh Malesis, yeah.
What's the Iyas Ein HaSeichel?
Riyas Ein HaSeichel is a whole different thing. I don't think that's relevant here. Riyas Ein HaSeichel B'chlal is the hisamtus, that when you understand something so well as if you see it. I don't know. That's hisamtus.
Very simple question. When the linguistic roots, no problem. Mushrish in the nefesh. But when you imagine a picture, a seer in your mind, bring it out on paper, is that in the language of Hasidus also called Oisius?
Again, say what? When
you have a seer, you're not thinking a thought.
I know exactly what you mean. Yes,
and you bring
it would be called because Oisius. Yeah, you would call.
Together what Hasidus calls Oisius?
Yes, but remember, Oisius doesn't always mean letters. Oisius can be kalim, because even a seer has kalim. Like when I look at a picture, I see in my mind, but the picture has details in my mind. It's not just it's a difference between a picture and no picture. It's just, that is that sense. Okay. So it's about Esis Machshava, they're Chemer L'Tzura. That's exactly the Eira Seichel. What means Chemer L'Tzura? They are form, substance.
No, the Aces are not the form, the matter.
No,
The Aces are the matter.
are the matter. Chemer. That's what I meant by form. Yeah. They're the matter. They're the substance of the form. Okay, yeah. The Chemer L'Tzura is Chemer is basically say matter and form and spirit.
But his faket usually.
Okay. So it's the matter. It's like the Chemer L'Tzura. It is the
matter to the form.
Yeah, the matter to the spirit. L'gabe Eira Seichel compared to Eira Seichel, she'en be'erech zel lezeh, because they are relative to each other.
Substance.
Yeah. In other words, if we didn't have machshava, we really would not, Seichel would not really be able to express itself. If there's no machshava period, just dibur and maisa, it would be a big gap, big jump. So you need machshava, dibur and maisa to be able to really. Okay, so we'll give Mashenken Esis Hadibur v'gam Hevel Hadibur, both the letters of Dibur and Hevel, the sound of Dibur, the Ruach. Bo B'Hagshama. This is not Beruach. Yeah, they come by Hagshama Shenifred min Haseichel v'Amidus. This is already Hagshama means tangible matter. Hagshama, yeah. And it's Nifred min Haseichel v'Amidus. It's not Miyuchid. It's separate from the Seichel HaMidus. Ve'ein Tamid, and that's why they're not always, except some people who speak all the time, but he's talking about, normal person.
That's all Seichel usually anyways.
Like he says, the Eis Ladaber, ve'eis Lachshes. There's a time to speak, and there's a time to be quiet. Ve'ein Eisius Murgoshim, and they're also Eisius Murgoshim. They're tangible Eisius. By the way, the Rebbe speaks, you see all the chulus, the Rebbe Rashab, every 3 words is chulu. I don't even mention. Yud Shvat, Tov Shalom Zayin, the Rebbe spoke about the chulas that the Friedrich Rebbe's Memorim, when he would take this, he would cross out all the chulus. The Rebbe Rashab style had chulus, have a chulu, and every line you'll find 3 chulus.
And the Friedrich Rebbe?
Crossed them out. When he took the same Maimer and published it, would be Maitik in another Maimer, he crossed them out in his Maimer.
So you wouldn't
the Rebbe didn't explain why.
What the chulus might be?
He didn't explain them. The Rebbe didn't say why.
Why should the Friedrich Rebbe take out the chulus?
Because when he said that Maimer, when he printed the Maimer, it was his style. He didn't use the chulus. And the Rebbe the same thing. The Rebbe Rashab, this is unique. No other Rebbe has so many chulus. The Rebbe spoke about it. He didn't explain it. He just said. But Pashtas chulu means etc. More and more. Means, right. But here, see, look. I just look right here on this one line. Haseichel Amidus chulu, and in Talmid Das Rabbi Yisachshus chulu, and Esis Muksham chulu, and there's chulu. Look how many chulus there are. We don't even notice it. That's just interesting. Like it doesn't fit. Like what's chulus commission? Like right here. I mean, hundreds and hundreds.
Just need more. He had something more in his mind.
That's for sure. No, don't think you have it figured.
He had something more in his mind.
Back to Tanya, there's a hard of there. That's a double.
Yeah, but chulu and chulu. Yeah. But that's not related to this. Yud Shvat, I think Yud Shvat Lamed Zayin. I think that I ever spoke about it. Yeah, I remember. It just said it. The chulus, the Rebbe Rashab. It's clearly associated with his style of writing. Okay, v'hein Esis Murgoshim, and they are tangible letters. V'agam she'esis hadibra gam kein k'mechemer v'tzur. This is so thorough. This is about and even though Esis hadibra, the words of dibra also have also chemer v'tzura, because you have the idea that you're expressing, and you have the shape, the substance of the Esis. Hinezeu legabe er haba b'dibur. She'en ze er hamiyuchid k'mei er hamislavish b'machshava.
In other words,
here the
Chemer is the same, but the Eira Seichel you can't compare to the Eira that goes into Dibur. That's the difference. In other words, the Eira Seichel is more connected to the Nefesh.
I don't know if that was saying.
Yeah,
I think
Hinezeu
legabe er haba b'dibur. She'en ze er hamiyuchid k'mei er hamislavish b'machshava.
The difference in the Eira.
But he's saying
It's a different type of Eira.
No, one second. Hold on. Hinezeu legabe er haba. This Chemer,
you don't. It's not the machshava shebedibur.
He's saying a few things. First of all, there's more. He's saying more v'gam. Let's start with one.
Before
The first thing he says that's the gab of the air. The air that comes in dibur is not as close to seichel as the air that comes
That's it.
in machshava.
That's the answer to the question.
One answer.
Yeah.
So therefore, that we're here for a while.
Era Seichel has more shaykhs to the nefesh than the Era Dibur. That's why it's when you say they both are Chemel Tzura, but the Eir is different. They're both Chemel Tzura, but it's different. This is Era Seichel, this is Era Dibur. And Era Seichel is much more miyuchad than Era Dibur.
So therefore, the chemer is more chemer. The tzura is less tzura.
Like I said, it's a levush ruch. The levush is a ruch.
Yeah, so you can have both Chemer and Tzura, but it's a ganz andere Tzura. The Tzura is different.
No, there's definitely Eir Adibur. There's a Tzuras Adibur.
What goes into the Eisis Adibur? The Eir Adibur.
The bottom line, just because something has Chemer and Tzura doesn't mean it's the same level. That's the bottom line. So Chochma, look, everything has everything here. Chochma has Eris and Kalim, has Machshava has Machshava and Asius, but the Asius are Chemer to the Tzura. And also in this, in the Eishis Hadibur, you have to say the Eishis are not meyuchad. They're not one, mamish. So another difference is, first difference is that this is all, the whole surah of Machshava, of Dibur is not as close to as it is in Machshava, they're meyuchad. And even the letters of the Dibur, they also come, since they're not united, they also are more b'akshama. They're physically more b'akshama. There's more chemer, basically. Well, l'mayla b'chinas machshava v'dibur, and now l'mayla. What is this l'mayla? Remember, this is all down here. L'mayla b'chinas machshava v'dibur, hen kelim d'atzilas v'kelim d'briya, k'mishkosa b'etz chaim shar memzayim perek gimel. L'mayla machshava and dibur is the kelim of atzilas and the kelim of briya. Like it says in Eitz Chaim. The kelim d'atzilas ein elokus mamish. Now they're both kelim, remember, because they're both levush. The kelim that says elokus mamish umyuchad mamish ima eres the iu v'gamu yichad. The kelim of Atzilus are divine, and they're one with the energies of Atzilus. The iu v'gamu yichad. The hagam shem b'chinas mitzias, even though they're mitzias, they're kelim, so they exist. Mekom mokim harihem elokus mamish. Nevertheless, they're elokus.
But it's a chemer of a higher tzur.
The kelim de bria im b'chinas yesh v'nivra. The lav iu v'gamu yichad. Kelim Abriya are yesh nivra, they're actually yesh, and they're not one with the source. Gam l'gab b'chinas eira mislavish b'kelim Abriya. Even compared to the air that goes into the containers in Briya, that's also hu eira neshama, even there they're not one. So not only they're not one with the... Because remember, the Eir, like you said, the Eir HaDibur is also not miyuchid. So, like we see by a person, that the Eir v'chayis HaNefesh, the energy, the life energy, even though it's mamish in the guf and you feel it, the person's alive. You only know the mitzvahs. You only know that it exists. You only know that there's some energy inside of us, but you have no idea what type of energy.
That's
what is
for what?
For the kelim of Briya. Kamei kelim, kelim de Briya, eir neshama, malubish behem. Like the kelim, the containers of Briya, the eir neshama malubish behem, neid behem. Rak b'chinas yidiyas mitzvahs levad. Kamashkos v'mokamachar. In other words, what he's saying here is, he's bringing out across the machshava dibur how it is l'mayla, that both have kelim. Atzilus has kelim, and so does Briya. So Machshava has kelim as Asius, but those Asius are very subtle and very much one, mamish one, and they are connected to the muchus of the air, like Machshava is connected. In Dibur, and same thing kelim the Briya, so there's Asius, but they're nifrit. So they contain the message that you're conveying through you're transmitting through the words, but because they are not one with them, they only convey the mitzias of it. They don't convey the muhus of it. They don't convey the essence of it. He's going to now say, obviously, that there's the other side of things. Remember, all this is still focusing on the nifrit part of Dibur. Then he's going to say, and yet it expresses deepest things. So remember, there's the other side to it.
Takes you. As soon as you're comfortable, but first you have to make it comfortable.
The do the era neshama zeh b'chinas atzilus shebebriya, and that's atzilus shebebriya. So that era neshama means the era neshama within dibur, or the era neshama within briya is atzilus the briya, and the kelim are not miyuchid to it. They're not one. They're nifrid. Therefore, they only relate to the metzius of it, not the muhus. See, what's the difference between chulu and kamesh kasu makamacher? It's not chad. V'gam l'gabe erzeh lav inun v'gam mui chad bebriya, like you said. Oh, one second, I skipped something. V'neide gam ken sheyesh hefresh gadol ben atzilus kameshu, but atzilus l'kameshu bebriya kamesh kasu makamacher. And neide, it's also known there's a big difference between atzilus, how it's not atzilus, and how atzilus is in briya. We learned about this earlier.
Of how the eir hadibur is related to dibur, and how the eir seichel is related to machshav.
Yeah. And also how that even the Eir HaMachshav, as it comes into Eir HaDibur, which means in B'riya, it's different. And even, in other words, it's not only is it not one with the Eir and the Machshav in Atzilus, even with the Eir in the B'riya, it's not. Even the Eir in Kelim, it's not, which is an additional point that he didn't make before.
Mm-hmm. In other words, in B'riya, Eir and Kelim cannot really connect.
But more in Dibur, in other words, in Machshava, two things are happening. You're closer to Seichel B'chlal, so you have a bigger gili and you're much more connected to it. And the Kelim are very, very much expressive of that type, of the nature of Seichel. In Dibur, number one, two, it's in Dibur, you're far away from the source of Seichel, so that, but also the Seichel that it's in Dibur is also, the words don't have the same unity with it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and now it's expressed. Yeah. So there's two things here. So number one, it's more distant from it's like the Eiris and Kelim Bateyu and Tikun. It's like even the Eir it's distant from, and also the Eir and Keli, even on their own level, they're distant. The bottom line is, in other words, when a person speaks, besides the fact that you can't express the deepest thoughts, the deepest ideas, even the words of what you do express are not quite as comfortable or tailored to the idea of Seichel. They're already Hakshomeh. Maisa would be even more. You can build something with Chochmeh. And you can see there's wisdom. But the Keli for it, a table, is never going to be the quite the type of container like thoughts. That's the thing. Okay. That's the distance of it. This is dissecting like a surgeon. Okay, wow. Doesn't stop. Here it goes even more detailed. In Atzilus Gufa, it's also two levels. The Kelim of Midas, Zah, and the Kelim of Malchus. The Kelim of Zah,
It's like machshav.
the Kelim of Zah is Machshava. And Merag Gvane Ha'er, She'enam Lifil Dover Kim Legalasol Tairas Etzem. Colors in light, especially if you know science, all light is white. It's just the prism, the thing that bends light that makes colors.
No, here he's saying something else. He's saying he brings a marshal. When you look at a red apple, you know the taste of it.
One second before that. First of all, simple colors of light. Yeah. So they're colors, they're kelim, they're asius, but they're so bottled to the light. It's just a question of what color light you're seeing. It's still light. It's just red light, green light, blue light. That's the point here. So they don't have anything. They're basically what he said before the air. That's the galas asatzme. It doesn't have any. It's not for the makabel. It's completely. It's a deeper understanding of Eira Machshava now. Kelim that. In other words, when you think different ideas, the asis, the way you're thinking is just different ways for your thought to express itself. Okay. Like the color of what do we say? Marav govern. Okay, fine. The look and color.
The
could
also be like the form.
Yeah. Okay, like the look and color of a fruit. Shemed al time apri. It reflects. It tells us what's the taste of it. Mara halevin shemed al mesikus. White shows that something is sweet. Or mara edem, something red, color red, shows something is bitter. Alach mitzus. By apple, you see it like that. White apples are considered sweet, red a little bitter. Ein Scherisch ist das eh. Es kommt darauf, Lamat, Slip Golos, nicht Mamisch.
This is with, what's it called, with genetic modification.
Yeah, it's a modification.
The Kalim, the Malchus, that's Kalim that's Kalim the Zah. The Kalim the Malchus, which is Ein Lifel Chutz La'etzem.
That's Dibur, is this.
So that would be an example. Let's say an example would be not just the color of a light. Let's say how the light, I'm just thinking a second, a keli that distorts the light, meaning that it's like maybe even diminishes it, like sunglasses maybe, or something like that, where the light is still there, but it's not just the color is different, but it's nifrit, it's changing the shape and form of the light. So you can't see. It's usually like shefa. Okay.
Or maybe it's a different type of keli. It's not a gavon, it's a keli which...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like glasses, let's say eyeglasses. Or a curtain. You know, a parsa, a masach, a parsa. Where light is getting through, but it's definitely, but when you see it on this side, it's not just reflecting, it's not just a color that's bottled to that's just expressing the light. Yeah. It's a different, so shinei mahus, yeah, okay.
That's Kalim.
Okay, that's Kalim. That's like,
The Malchus.
that's Dibba. That's in Atzilus Gufim.
Now he goes back.
Okay, now we go to the Zweite Zayt. So even though the Dibur is a Levush Nifred, compared to Short Machshava, and it's outside, like you said, Nifred Legamri. Not Nifred Gomor, not Pirud Legamri. No, I'm saying Pirud Gomor, not Pirud Legamri. Nevertheless, Im Kol Zanereim She has Bechinas Chayes Pnimi Va'atzmi Ma'atzmas Hanevesh B'Yesa Dafke Behevel Zeh HaGashmi. We see that there's a chayis pnimi va'atzmi. There's an energy, a passion, a life that's pnimi, internal, va'atzmi and atzmi, essential. Ma'atzmus hanefesh b'yeser. In other words, a stronger one from the mamish, from the inside, the inners of the nefesh. That comes dafke behevel zeh hagashmi, dafke in this physical voice, or sound, or air, or wind. That comes out externally. In other words, when you speak, despite the fact that it's so outside of who you are, it expresses something, this sound, that comes from the deepest part of you.
That's the guy with the makabel.
No. Also, one second. No. Look for. Let's hear what he says. The whole ikar, the primary part of the primi, the deepest part of the nakuda, the point, the deepest point of the heart, and his whole atmas and your whole essence, yove behevel hadibur harbe yesrim machshava, comes out in the expression in voice, much more than through machshava. Like on a simple level, you can yell and scream. It comes out a certain intensity. That's the word, intensity. Ukamoi, kasher medaber divrei ava v'cheshek shadvarim yetzim mikiruv halev, like when a person speaks words of love and desire, that the words come out from the depth, from mikiruv halev, they come from your inner, from your closeness in your heart to the person you're speaking to, or to the thing you're. V'nimshachim behevel hadibur, and they express themselves and are channeled through the words, through your hevel adibur, through the sound of your, or through the ear of your speech. And they enter the heart of the listener, that he should be impacted with love or compassion.
Why doesn't he bring it to the fact that when you speak with passion, you get worked up yourself? Machshava, you don't get worked up. If you speak about an was the negeya, best to.
First of all, because Pashit, I think it's a bigger chiddush. This is a bigger chiddush. Even another person that's outside of you completely is getting more of you than when you think. So when let's say you think about someone you love.
It's not you getting more of you. It's the other guy's getting more of you.
Yeah, I don't think it's a stira, but it's stronger because you're saying like this. So when you think about someone you love, or something that you love, or someone or something, he doesn't say just a dov. What does he say? Divrei. So it's strong. But when you speak it, it's so powerful and so intense that it actually can enter into another person. Because you could argue, dibur is a shvach izach. Dibur is nifred is like you said before, it's a pure gomor. It's levush hanifrid. What could it really express? You could say a hug can express it. You say no, words, even words that come.
The heart penetrate the heart.
Yeah.
Penetrate. Really get in there. So from your heart, they penetrate.
Well, let's finish what he said. Maybe he says some other things about it. Okay. V'chein lehepech. One second, I didn't finish. Oh, no. What's the reason for it? Because the guf hevel adibur, in the physical voice that goes from the heart, there's a er chayz v'godel mepnimis hanefesh. There's a very powerful, intense light and liveliness from pnimis hanefesh. Al kein ruach hevel adibur agashmi poil v'isar reishim godel belev hashemeya. And that's why, because it has that, contains that type of intensity. That's why the ruach hevel adibur hagashmi, the physical expression and voice, can affect and make an impact, a strong impact.
I think when he says hevel, I think he's saying deeper than voice. I think hevel is the literal
He said intensity.
Yeah.
the air, that the breath,
in the
breath that becomes voice, that comes from
Yeah.
the depth of the heart, goes into the depth of the heart.
Yeah.
So that's-
Yeah.
bigger than the word even.
Yeah, the Kael Murgish, like he said. Another example he's giving now. Okamei betfila.
1 second.
Wait,
Say
excuse
it
me,
later.
Let's go to v'chein lehepech. I'm sorry, v'chein lehepech. But moras nefesh shekas pnimi, when a person is depressed, bitter, or or angry. 1 second. But moras nefesh is like he's like bitter, or he's downfall. He's crestfallen. Like kas pnimi, or his internal anger. Yumshich behevel adibur. It also expresses itself in a way that's very intense, much more than in the machshava. U'kamei betfila mekirus halev, like the davening tefillah that comes from the inner like walls, the inner chambers of the heart. Sheba b'dibur dafka. Tefillah that comes dafka in speaking, in words. U'kamei v'hine hi medaberes al liba. U'kamei v'chana. U'kamei. I need glasses.
Okay.
It's the reading glasses. Like I didn't see the ches. Like it says by Chana, medaberes al liba. She spoke her heart, and she was davening. V'sham hoyedibur belachash. He's bavarning. You could say it loud, but there the dibur was silent. Because he saw only her lips were moving. He didn't hear a sound. Because it was inside a tifa bittel, very deep bittel. So very deep suspension of self. That doesn't mean there was no dibur. No, he's bringing a raya. You could say, 1 second, it's not a raya. You can see clearly he thought she was drunk because nothing came out. So there's no koil. So he's asking, there was dibur, but in this case, because of the bittel that she had, the dibur came in an internal voice that could not be heard. Interesting, but here therefore he's saying it's the dibur, not necessarily the sound. Because there's no sound by her.
But there was sound, it just was very low.
It was hevel hadibur.
It was hevel hadibur, but it was very low. She was saying it very low to herself.
Okay.
Why?
Like davening that is silent. But it's dafke b'dibur. The kasher yeh b'machshava levad has a rosh ein bo b'zeh b'pnimis hanefesh.
But there's no
Kol kach.
There's no hevel gashmi when you daven quietly.
It says you're supposed to be speaking. No one else should hear. No one else should hear you.
There is, but it's quiet. You have to say it.
Like whispering.
Shmonester, you have to say it.
You have to say it.
No?
You can't just
Lips just have to move.
No,
The sound have to come
You
out.
have to have
You have to hear what you're saying.
You have to actually have the headphone.
How long have you been davening this way? Trust me, don't worry.
To speak to my emotions.
Join the club. We all got problems with that.
I wonder why it didn't.
No wonder it didn't work.
The car didn't.
Well, some people do it and it doesn't work.
Even they speak.
Because when it's b'machshava levad, and now he's adding something more than what he said before. Before, he didn't speak about what happens when you just express in machshava your love. But it's only in machshava, it's a sign that it doesn't come from the deepest parts of the nefesh that much. Taka from Primus and Nefesh is going to be expressed in Dibur.
Why is it?
Hagam that the
Why is it?
Why is it?
That's what he's trying to bring out.
That's the whole thing. No, it means it goes two ways. No, but in other words, it's two ways here. Number one, that dafka the hevel gashmi, the breath, the physical sound, expresses the depth, and the depth dafka needs to be expressed out there.
Because the sheirish of
Because
Tikun
it's not Haba Italia.
Because the sheirish of Tikun is higher than Tohu. Good.
You're talking about Hevel is the Indian Tohu.
Yeah, but the hevel is tell you here.
I know.
No,
But
no.
I'm saying it's because
No, but in certain aspects, I know what you mean.
Dibur has a conduit that supersedes machshava.
He's going to say, by the way, that Tikun is even greater than this. By the way, Tikun is even higher than this. But this is also good. But it's also a step in the way. Remember, this also in Tohu, when a person, for example, doesn't control themselves like Tohu, and their anger comes out because they can't control. There's no question. There's much deeper anger when that expression like that. You see how angry they are, that they couldn't stop it. It's not necessarily Gedusha. He's not saying this is the Gedusha dafka. Obviously, in Gedusha, it's also involved. It's like the Rebbe would say, it's a tudvei shreitman. When it hurts, you cry. And if you're not crying, it maybe doesn't hurt you so much. That's interesting. When we cry out for why we have pain, why do we cry out? Why don't we just control it? Because there's something that comes out in the cry that you just, the intensity of the pain causes a person to just make a sound.
But that's not Dibur.
No, but I'm talking about sound. I'm talking about sound. Otherwise, why a sound? Why not just... Because it's interesting. It's like almost like when you bang the rock hard enough, it's going to make a sound. You don't bang it enough, it means it didn't make a sound, it means it's not angelet as etif. And the kvetch, that from film... The nerves. It's the nerves. Like if you don't feel it, they're numb. You have to feel it. Okay.
Machshav is more premium-stick thing in Indian.
Yeah.
But expressive-wise...
Okay. Ulule b'chinas...
But when you express it, people reach...
Ulule b'chinas habit la'atzmi shebzeh hayabah b'dibur b'kel dafka. Yeah. And had she not had the bitl atzmi, she was completely, completely sublimated, completely suspended, selfless. It would have come out in a dibur, in a kel, in a sound.
So she didn't have a sound.
So in other words, nicht pshat as
Not the name of clear. Not the name of clear.
gefelt.
A sound that he would hear that she's praying. He didn't think she's praying. There's two sounds. There's a sound you actually hear words. And he's saying there's a sound you don't hear words.
So it came from Primis and Nefesh, but it wasn't the curl because of the bittul, but it still came from
Look, it doesn't say here that she actually... 1 second. It doesn't say... The question is, was there any sound coming out of her mouth, Chana?
A little bit, yeah, it was quiet.
It's a silent sound.
It was a
It's
silent-
sound, but it's a silent sound.
Show me like what?
Hey,
Like this?
her
Breath?
lips,
A breath?
lips were moving.
Yeah.
Not the
The lips were moving,
the
so something was going on there.
You can let move and nothing comes
Yeah,
out. You can let move
Shmoneh
like that.
Shmoneh is quiet.
Okay, that's what you say. That's it.
That's not Shmoneh.
So why did Eli think that she's drunk? Why did he think that she's davening Shemnesser?
because
no such thing
In
before,
those
right?
days, it wasn't
No
normal.
such thing.
She was the first one that davened like that.
Friday.
In those days, you went to there, you go, you shech them behavior. You don't sit
You
standing.
didn't daven there.
She was a feminist ahead of her times.
100%.
I can't even understand it.
Dibur is Malchus.
This is the inyan that kail. The voice is me'eder kavana. Hakavana. The voice itself, the sound itself, awakens the intention. Kavana we know is ruchnis. The kashem is beina salaki b'galas haber v'leis bal b'liba kol kach. When a person meditates or contemplates in a divine contemplation on the greatness of the Beta, of the Creator, and is not so influenced by it in his heart. His heart is not so affected by it. He, when he expresses it in words, the words itself. So if he was just thinking about it, it's not so affected, say it, is the Eitzah. Say it, express it.
What comes first? The previous thing he expresses it, or by saying it, it comes into the previous. Because it ultimately, here he's saying a little bit differently.
Yeah,
by
no.
saying it, you're reaching into the previous.
Yeah.
Or you're saying, comes to the previous, is up the space.
Okay.
Which way does it go?
It can go both ways. It can go both ways. We said, and that's why it says to relate the praises of Shvachish Mokim, the praises of the Eibishter in Psukkah de Zimra, that he's supposed to supposed to speak about those praises. Praise him. Keeps using the words Sipur. Your greatness I will relate, I will tell. Shabbat b'sipur dvorim dafke. He comes in as telling a story. And through that you have the Spalas HaNefesh, that the Nefesh is what we say, Spalas? Excited. V'chein b'kel nigun, same thing when you sing a nigun, sound of a nigun, sheme'er ha'kavana p'nimi shebelev shel ma'al masaga. That's absolutely true. When you start singing a nigun, even if you're not in the mood, it definitely awakens, because it touches a place that's deeper. That's why we said both things. That on one hand, the pnimius comes out more in the koil than through machshava, and then koil reaches deeper.
But it's the koil of the nigun. So by dibur, there's asis involved. By nigun, there's the sound.
But a sound is a very physical, external thing, and yet the nigun kel nigun sheme'er ha'kavana pnimi shebelev shel ma'al masaga. It awakens the kavanah, the intention, the internal part of the heart that's higher than seichel, than higher than understanding. V'hainu de basaga gufa aydei kel ha'nigun meseder b'kavanah pnimi shel ma'al ma'kavanah shebasaga levad.
Be careful. The choice of words is very specific.
No, he's saying like this. But saga gufa, when a person, for example, understands something with their mind, and then they express it in a nigun, the kel ha'nigun,
even without words, just the kel.
Yeah, meseder. The kel ha'nigun is awakens a kavanah primis that's higher than the kavanah in the thinking itself.
Look. First he said, "V'chein b'kel ha'nigun, you me'ered the kavanah pnimis."
Shel belev shel ma'ala mahasaga.
Number one.
Now he's saying even in hasaga
in
guf.
hasaga guf.
Yeah, exactly.
Through the nigun, you me'ered the kavanah pnimis. Again, the kavanah pnimis.
That's higher.
That it's higher than the kavanah shebehasaga.
Yeah. It means like this. Very simply put, let's say you have no kavanah at all. No hasaga and kavanah at all. You sing, it's going to awaken something. Let's say you do have kavanah in your mind. You're contemplating a kavanah satfila, and then you sing it. It'll be deeper than the kavanah within the hasaga itself.
So there's a kavanah in the hasaga, and there's the kavanah in the
I just said no. In other words, no. Let's say there's no hasaga. There's no hasaga. When you sing, it's going to be made a kavanah.
Yes.
And when there is a kavanah in hasaga, it'll be made a deeper kavanah. That's the point that he's saying. The kale v'dibur, the kale and dibur. But legel yanenu, remember the point here is not words or sound. It's something bakshama, something that's outside hakshama and nifrit from you. That's the key. That even there you have something internal. That's because remember he's speaking about the havolim. He's speaking here of the mouth, speech, but same thing with the nose and the ears. He's talking about a hevel that comes outside. You breathe from your mouth. So you think it's a very external thing, or you speak from your mouth. And the answer is no. And the explanation is no. That outer expression, that hevel goes very deep into the nefesh. That's the shem sag. Tohu is mushrish in those havolim.
What is the hevel? Is it the sound, or is it the aces? Is a certain?
Well, the hevel we spoke before. There's
yeah.
Here, the hevel is a cavity that allows sounds to come out of. Let's put it that way. The metzach doesn't release sounds. Metzach doesn't release any energy.
Hevel is the actual breath.
Sound.
No, we said it's both. Breath. The volume of when you say the hevel is both the cavity that the hevel definitely for sure. She says
the hole. No, hevel is the actual air that goes through the hole.
Fine, it doesn't matter, but it can't be possible without the hevel.
The hollow.
Right.
The hevel is literal breath.
Where's the breath stored?
Where's the breath in the ears? I mean, it's not breath. It means once there's a hollow, there's something flowing. It's a flow. I think the word has to be translated. Like it says, "Havolim the ezen chetim peh." He means the. I guess it means the ear that travels through that section. It's fine. So be it. It's the same idea. Okay. The kel v'dibur daf me'erim primis hanefesh v'chein espalas prim v'atzmei bo b'kel v'dibur. Here it says both sides. The kel v'dibur on one hand me'erim primis hanefesh v'chein espalas prim v'atzmei bo b'kel v'dibur daf. Beide Seiten. So kel v'dibur is me'er awakens that part inside of you, and the part inside of you expresses the dafka v'dibur, and they're not necessarily interdependent. It can go either way. It could be something very deep inside of you and it's expressed in a cry or a song, or it could be the other way around, that if you're not in the mood or whatever, you can start, Kale will awaken that part. That's for sure.
That's the channel, bottom line, that's the channel.
Okay, so he gave so far 2 examples. He gave one about speaking divrei cheshek v'ava, av v'cheshek. He spoke about tefillah. Now he's going to Torah. First he was the Gashmistic example, then tefillah, now Torah. Torah also needs dafka dibur. Like it says, v'debarta, you shall speak these words. Uksiv chayim heim lemeitzeim. Torah is chayim. This is a life for the meitzeim bepeh, for those that express it in bepeh. It's a Ma'ameh Chazal. Why does it have to come bepeh? V'debarta meitzeim bepeh. Chayim dafka meitzeim, because chayim is dafka when you express it. B'dibur dafka, in the words. Speech. V'hinu yadua.
By the way, I learned the city of Balabatim. Whatever, he's also in a cheder.
Good. From the Club 72?
Club 72, yeah.
Okay. We have to make some conditions.
Conditions.
How to join the club. This is a new Freemason. It's,
At the moment, I just have an observer status.
V'hini, you do it tzaikas halev u'lamayla mitzaikas hakel. Now he starts a new thing here. So Yedua, it's known that the tzaikas halev, the cry from the heart, is higher than the cry of the voice. Cheda kasha. That when you reach an etzema nefesh,
It's a question.
yeah. The cheda, when you reach an etzema nefesh that has no hispashtus.
Yeah.
By the way, Simon, you have a marshal for Tzaikas Halev?
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you a immediate marshal.
Right, for example.
The worst marshal, however, but it's a negative one.
Yeah,
The moment of shock.
Yeah.
The person can't even cry.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And in positive, there's also positive. When but most people are not on that level. When you hear something, mamish molly is pilot, but it's a very, you're so blown away, you can't even smile. You can't even no
I thought I
expression.
meant when a person does a certain amount of crying, a person does, but they can't. It's so deep, they nothing, no sound comes out. It's called a silent cry.
Yeah, but when do you see that? You see that usually in a moment of shock. They say that it's important in that stage that they shouldn't be crying. And then and the problem is if the person never cries, that's not good. It has a point where it has to come out. Yeah. There is definitely, yeah. But let's see. So he says clearly, it's etzem nefesh ein b'chinas hispashtus klal. Alkein eyev shalei lotzei lovi eyev shalei lovi b'tzaikas hakel ki'im b'tzaikas halev. It's so deep. It's such etzem. There's no hispashtus. So it can't express itself in sound. Their hearts cried out to Hashem. Okay, so his bavarding, so his answer is like this. But that's a separate discussion.
That's a shock.
Yeah. But when it comes to primis asher ba kol mokim, if it's already, if you're talking no hispashtus, then obviously dibur is not dibur is hispashtus. But if you're talking if it's already hispashtus, whether it's dibur is going to be deeper than machshava. Because remember, that shak also has no machshava. It's so deeper than machshava. You don't think about it. It's just a complete cry from it. There's no kalim.
So that's the word.
That's the word.
When
When there's kalim. When there's kalim. But then other aces when there's aces and kalim. So it'll be deeper than the aces of machshava. Dibur. So it's not a stira. Because that's a whole different gdara.
Which means that be'emesin, in machshava gufa, we said before with machshava that it's connected to the makkah and the shadish. In emesin, it's felt in the splashes, but really it's a deeper connection. The only thing is the mila of dibur is that this etzem connection comes out. It's more bispashis, but lav daf gets a deeper connection. In it's coming from a deeper place.
Well, no. First of all,
Who says the makar is deeper by dibur than it is by machshava?
For sure, because all these rayas he brought. When you sing, when you speak, the things that you express.
Because you're expressing now.
But that's the point. The expression has that power. Who cares? That's exactly the point. Why do you? Theoretically, you're saying it because you know the fact. But theoretically, if machshava is closer, you'd think machshava should have a deeper impact. But it doesn't. And the other way around, when you that type of the expression that comes, the power the intensity that comes through expressing through dibur is more intense than machshava. No matter how you twist and turn it, it's the bottom line. That's what he's trying to say. Does it reach the deepest part of the etzem nefesh that's beyond expression?
No,
that we're not talking about.
The dibur, the whole time you're saying is an effect, is a cause of why it's coming out, or it's an effect?
He said both, exactly both. He said mamish both. Kel v'dibur dafka me'eder primis hanefesh, v'chein is palas primis hanefesh, ba b'kel v'dibur dafka. It works both ways. He doesn't use this example, but the fact is, you could be as passionate as possible in your thoughts about an idea, but when you express it, there's no question it's a deeper passion. Forget about other people for sure won't know what's inside your mind. I mean, when the Rebbe spoke about something passionately, was it different than when he didn't speak passionately? Of course. It shows him, it's negaya more. When someone cries about something, or yells about something, it shows you that it's negaya, and takidvorim yetzim alev nachnasim alev. There's no question about that.
I'm surprised it doesn't bring it here. It's such a...
He says dvorim yetzim alev nachnasim alev. Yes, he does. Yeah. No, use that lashon.
Where?
Look, and then it says nechnasim alev.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't see the exact lashon.
Here, he just explains it. Advarim yetzim mishachim unechnasim l'lev hashemeach.
Yeah, okay.
Once it comes in this pashtus, has bo behebla dibur dafke. There you go. And the deeper from the nefesh it comes, the more primis from the nefesh, more internal from the nefesh, the stronger is the dibur.
Maybe it's more intense in Nachshava.
And two things, and it also makes a bigger impact on the other.
Maybe it's deeper intensity in the mind, but just we don't know about it because it's in the mind. It's hidden from. I mean, we know about the intensity of the passion that he has because of the dibur.
Why would you say that? No, why? First of all, we said keil me'er kavana. That's the fact. You don't have the kavana that you have when you have a song or keil or a sound. You forget about anyone else. You don't have it. So that's that side proof. I mean, each aspect here brings different proofs, but that is a very strong proof. Person's not in the mood. They start singing a nigun, others start singing, and suddenly it touches them. So it means that before it wasn't there. Machshava couldn't do it. They couldn't get themselves to think, to get themselves awakened. They couldn't get recited without the kol. Everything's possible, but the fact is, when you sing it, the okel, it does it. That means that something has some impact like that. And the other way around also, the fact that something is deeper inside, express it. So v'chein b'tainig atzmi, it's another thing. She spoke in tefillah and teira and the muchash.
Doing 7 to 8.
7 to 8?
Yeah, doing the weekdays, regular weekdays.
Oh. Wow. Thanks for even the invite. Rabbi, honored and privileged to be a part of it today. Hopefully, at least on Sundays, maybe during the week if I can.
I'm here Sundays.
You only Sunday. You're doing here though?
Yeah.
Be well. Same thing as the tainug atzmi. The essential tainug in the inner parts of the nefesh, mizgala behevel adibel uzulose limshachei seilav kamei re'ur medaberes.
Yeah, re'ur medaberes. It's the Gemara in Kislev says that you see a woman talking to a man.
Oh yeah.
And based on that, you make certain conclusions. So in the fact that she's talking, you see already the intentions.
So Shem primisam mizgala, that's mizgala, that the inner pleasure, the essential pleasure, is reveals itself in dibur. The dibur draws a person closer to you. Okay, right. So the medaberes is a reflection of that deeper, of the Etzem Nefesh, that draws someone closer. Okay, that's for sure.
Where's that timing? How's that timing?
But it's even in Gedusha. I mean, that's forget about positive.
The room of the bed is that eye that is more going on between the two of them.
In other words, speech, but it also means that when you speak to someone, if you, like he said it before in the different issues, that when you have Av v'cheshek and you speak about it, it had much more impact.
It's not timing.
Yeah.
Only after that.
No, you could argue.
When she's talking, you can tell that there's more going on.
But I think that, but that's not what it means. It means more than that. It means that speaking is the way you draw people closer to yourself. Speaking is a tool that draws people closer more than other things. That in other words, like he said before, when a person has cheshek, has ava v'cheshek, shemedabrim yetzu b'Kislev, it's nechnasim al lev. Let's put it this way: in simple ways, if someone flirts with someone with their eyes, it's not as strong as them with their words, even though it has an impact, but it's stronger. It expresses more and so on. I'm not even talking kedusha, not kedusha, just the etzem inyan.
That's the difference between Riyah and Shmiya. Riyah should be stronger.
But
timing.
Tainuk, he's talking about Tainuk. He's talking kedusha, of course. Tainuk atzmi.
You told me before the expression of Primis and Nefesh, explained it by Nigen, and by Curl, and by Teira. What's up with Tainuk? What do you see in Tainuk, the expression?
If someone has a deep pleasure for something, and they express, and it will, what he's saying here, it will express itself in words, and those words will draw that,
and make the Tainuk even bigger,
or reveal it more. U'kamoi came b'divrei chachma shemagala kol emek haseichel, ayde hevel chemer hadibur, yeshem b'chinas hatzura shaboy. And same thing when a person speaks chachma, that reveals the depths of the seichel, of the mind, is through the speaking with the chemer, physical speech. And they have more than the tzura, than the idea, the untangible idea that's expressed. Which is, yeah. In other words, what he's saying is this is very common. This is what I was thought he thought he'd bring early. When you explain something to someone else, there's no question it's deeper than when you think about someone else. Even though in a certain way it doesn't have the depth.
But in his pashtus,
yeah. But and it's like Mitamidi Yisim Mekulam. When you write even more so. So basically he's saying than just this. Because when you express it through the tzirufim, some way, through some form of expression that expresses the seichel. Now he's speaking about Shmiya. That when you hear the words from your mouth of your teacher, Yikonis hadover, hadvar chachma belibe yesem al de ksav. Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
One second. At first I thought, okay, so first thing I thought he was saying that through speaking the teacher is deeper stuff. Now he's saying that when you hear words from your teacher, it's more, it goes deeper inside you in your heart than through reading it.
Which is reading is only seichel.
Even when he says it Barichas Seiser, like Ayin Beis.
Imagine those that heard Ayin Beis.
Yeah. Even though when it comes in writing,
That's a good point.
it's say same words.
It's the same thing.
It's mamish words. The words. It's like a dibur. Mekom a dibur kabbalah. Svahanochas ha'inyan hu be'efen acher. Es legt sich ab Gott anders. That's what he says.
This is spiritual so.
Es legt sich ab Gott anders.
This is spiritual so.
Big difference.
Of course it is.
You read
No, when you read it,
you hear the Sikha from Rabbi is better.
No. When you read it, you can understand it in detail more. But he's not saying that. He's talking about the depth.
That's not the connection.
No, the penetration into your heart. We're talking.
Yes, that's it.
The penetration.
Plug in.
Yeah, as a leitzachab.
This is me. This is
Not about Havana.
This is
Nicht alles Haupt, Gor anders.
Rav Davka says.
Goran.
This is me. This is so. This is the cheshik.
Don't
When
wait
you
to
speak
Haupt.
to someone,
Kamei ken bedivri chacham.
they should pick up more.
Kamei ken bedivri chacham. Megal kam yesem b'chins tzurish b'ifnaseh.
After you go to Big Sam, and then you can see this.
He's going to say that now. 1 second. V'ho, not question. V'ho the esis machkimes. It says the esis machkimes that when you read letters on paper, it makes you smarter. Machkimes, the words themselves sharp are machkimes. How do you say machkimes? Make you
smarter, no sharper.
Why isn't
That's when he didn't heard it at all. So in other words, if you didn't hear it at all, obviously when you're going to read it, Esis Machkimis. But the second answer he also gives. And this is also, it's not that the Esis B'Ksav just make you wiser, it's because you're Harave in those Esis. So you understand it. You could also say, that's what we're talking about, that there's a koyach that comes from reading of Chezer. And not the Legen Zechop. That when you're learning it properly with Asius, there's that it's like the rebound effect of going into something and then it comes back to you because you understand it deeper. But when he hears it, the words of the Rav, he receives it and selects it.
He doesn't say he understands it, man. He says
this is because of the desire of the Rav to teach the pupil.
To a certain extent. To a certain extent. It has an impact.
Isn't this the desire of the Rav?
What's
It maybe encompasses everything.
He didn't hear it from the Rav. His first answer is that Esis Machkimis is not referring if you heard it. In other words, if you heard it, it could be the hearing makes you more chacham. But if you didn't hear it, obviously Esis Machkimis. Like if someone tells you that the Rebbe said so and so, so you say, I want to see it in writing, and you look in writing, the Esis Machkimis.
But that's because you believe.
More than what not because you believe, because you see, you appreciate. In other words, let's put it this way: hearing it from someone else,
words you can study.
it's better to read it than hearing it from someone else, and better to hear it from the source than reading. Even though reading has its mila, like he says, it could be the Erchezer. There's other milas, right?
Something that is written.
Oh yeah, there's no question. There's no question.
That's the Erchezer.
It's definitely the Hanocha, but the thing is, it's a little different than earlier, because earlier he was trying to explain that when you explain something, you actually understand it better, not just the Hanocha. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, it doesn't really say what it is. No, it's more the Hanocha. It's more the Legenzach. Yeah.
It's not.
It's a Legenzach. Even by the Ava V'cheshek, when she speaks with him, or any type of speaking, it's not so much on the understanding, it's that the Mashiach is stronger. The connection is stronger.
People don't understand.
Than if you don't have the Dibur.
The Neshama head, when you stand by for brain,
Isn't this not Dibur? Isn't this because the Rav wants to teach the people?
Huh?
Isn't this not because of the Dibur itself, but this is because the Rav wants to teach the people? Isn't what's called Yisod, the Heshek of the Rav to teach the people, and therefore
it doesn't say that at all here.
I understand. That's what I'm asking.
I don't think so.
No. The explanation of Yisod that when the Rav wants to teach
it may explain it, but it's not necessary to understand this for that.
It's not pointing to that. That's what I'm asking.
Right. I mean, let's put it without knowing that, it would still make sense.
Yeah, but I wonder why it would work.
But remember, he gave many examples. But it's not. But you see, but it's not just talking about teacher and student. He gave 5 different. No, but before Kelamer Kavana, there's no student there. So how does it work there?
But right now we're saying that the same letters in Kisav, same letters in speech, same letters in speech have an advantage that it's munach. What makes it munach? What is it?
The same reason that he spoke till now, because Dibur has that power.
Deeper.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. That's
no.
Then it wouldn't be a proof to what he's trying to say here. Here he's trying to make a proof that it's the expression of it. Like he says v'im kem muchrach.
All of this.
So from all this we know is muchrach. We have to say sheyesh b'mamoshes hahevel b'pchinas primi v'atzmus keiches hanefesh. You have to say that the mamoshes hahevel, in the tangible part of this breath or air, or whatever you want to call it, has within it the pnimis ve'atzmus keiches hanefesh, the inner and the essential part of the faculties of the nefesh. V'chol pnimis ve'etzem mechusa Hashem izgala barotz v'tainig v'seichel midas v'machshava kol zeh nimish behevel adibur. Everything. V'chol pnimis ve'etzem mechusa, and his whole pnimis and the etzem mechus that reveals barotzim and tainug seichel midas v'machshava. And he brought examples for everything, by the way. Tainug. Rotzen was the chish of this, yeah. Rotzen also. When you want something, you speak it, yeah. Seichel midus o machshave calls an imshel behevel adibur. Everything comes to the hevel adibur, but not psychos alev.
You're not talking about the teichen adibur.
Not psychos alev.
You're not talking about the Tikun of the Dibur itself necessarily. You told me that the Makkah is the Hevel itself?
The Hevel. In the Hevel.
So
There's something
some magic
in the mamoshes of the Hevel, in the physical external expression of Hevel, which is
there.
seemingly so external,
Everything's there.
has it has within it the Pnimi is the deepest parts of the nefesh. That's Tohu. Madrege the Tikun, he says in the parentheses, is the end of the paragraph of chapter. But Madrege the Tikun yeshlem shezeyin b'manin delay leishtamishel b'manin deloch. Didn't we have this earlier? B'manin delay leishtamishel b'manin deloch. Talking about the Mishkan. Talking about the manin is a garment, right? That the Eibishter says that I will build a Mishkan, b'manin delay in your garments, not in mine. The kavana b'zeh ala gilu de bebeis hamikdash shahayu medemim. He's bringing an example in Elam HaTikun that the kavana, the contention is when the gilu beis hamikdash was dafka demim, dafka in the lowest, in mineral. Ubezeh dafka you gilu edin seif mamish. Gilu edin seif beis hamikdash was dafka in demim. In other words, not in God's language. You think like machshava, you have to have dakazdik. You should have subtle and very spiritual container to contain. He says, no, I'm not manin deli. In dafka, in your external expression, in daimim, in the lowest, in the tangible, that's where you have the gilei elokus. So kadisa b'medashava pasha truma. It says in medashava pasha v'loy oidel shechivon shalamatan. The Medrash says that not only did he leave the higher worlds to come down, but dafka, he wants dafka, he preferred, desires, cherishes that which is below. Shahari hiniach es el yenim, because he left behind the el yenim, v'hisha shchina seit lamata. The ikar gili edin sof lamata dafka. So basically in Tikun, because this is all Tohu, he's saying, like the Sherish Advarim, that's maybe the reason why Taka is it this way, because the Eibishter, that's what he wants. The dafka and lamata should have the highest thing. Because the Cheder, you could ask, there should be more sublime tools. No. Dafka mamoshes, that's where you have the deepest expression. So read the Kitzur. You learned this Perek and the next one.
Yeah.
The whole Tikun comes through Shema of the forehead of Ak. The Chol Giluyim Gam Amshach Atzmish B'chinas HaToken. Yeah, all the Giluyim that Amshach and Atzmish and HaToken. And Yadei Mutza the Ak. Everything comes to the Mutza of Ak.
Here it divides Atzmius and HaToken again. Keeps dividing.
It's together. It's definitely together. I think it's two things. He may be referring to Atik and the Etzem.
But you're right, because it keeps on saying Amshach Atzmish B'chinas HaToken. Well, it sounds like there is Amshach Atzmish. It's not B'chinas HaToken. But here it's together, yes.
Yeah, V'shem Sagdu Tehu Ma'avolim the Eisen Chitim Peh. Everything comes from Tak, so here's how it works. Sagdu Tehu come from the Havolim, the spaces, the ear, nose, and mouth. V'shema detikum amitzchadak, and the shema comes from the metzach, from the forehead. U'ba'ageres hakezus the shem sag mepnimius ak, v'shema ha'ora. The sag comes from primius, and ma comes from the reflection. Omnam hu miyichud ab v'zag. But ma comes from the yichud, the unity of ab and sag. But inyan, and the inyan of this is the hinei hevel adibur hagam shu levush nifrid v'lei kamei maiseh. The hevel adibur, the sound of dibur, the ear, the ruach, the wind of speech. Even though it's a levush nifrid, it's a separate garment, and not like maiseh. Maiseh is completely outside. Because the words of thought, that's like a chemer and surah. That's very fitting, tailored, like a container, it's like substance for the form of seichel. Mashenkin they say dibur are not that way.
They are to Eradibur.
Yeah, they're not that type of unity. In Atzilus, in Kelim Lamaila, it's Kelim Atzilus and Kelim Debriya. That Er Neshama and Kelim Debriya are only, you know that they're there. It's like the Er Nefesh, but you don't know the Muhus. You don't know what it's like. Or Atzilus itself, it's Kelim Dezah, Kelim de Malchus. Im Kolzeh, nevertheless, even though Dibur is such an outside thing, an outer garment, Pirud. Pirud Gomur, nevertheless, Chayis Primi v'atzmi ma'nefesh sheba b'spash hariyuba b'dibur dafke. Nevertheless, the inner life and energy of the nefesh that comes b'spashtus, that's expressed, not like the tzaikas hakel, like the cry of the heart, tzaikas halev, that comes dafke, expresses of dafke in speech. Mashenke machshav v'chitzenius, whereas thought is only chitzenius. Like the words that come from the heart, the prayer that comes from the depths of your heart, and the sound awakens the inner kavana, and the depth of the seichel comes more through the chemer, through the tangible chemer of speaking, of the sound, more than the letters, the shape of the letters in writing. And this Shlemer, you can say this is the union of God says that the Beis Hamikdash, I will make it in your garments, not in my garments. So Hevel Halev is like, yeah, we're done. Next Perek, Reish Samach Dal, is going to explain. There's another place where you see Etzem Primis and Nefesh, and that's in the forehead and the face.
So we're going to discuss that this year?
I'm definitely going to discuss it.
I know, but next week it will be.
Next week will be way ahead.
Yeah.
I'll be ahead, but I'm going to definitely review it. I have to review it because it's all part of the flow. You mean learning it inside? Well, let's see where they're up to. Let's see where.
No, we're ready to Samachay, so next week will be like, you have to figure at least 3 ICS.
Okay. So we stop here. Finish Reish Samach Gimel 263. Next he's going to speak about the Metzach, how the forehead expresses also the inner part. But then he's going to distinguish how that's only a reflection, but it goes deeper. And the Hevel is you get more of the Chochmah, the more of the Pnimius, but it's not as deep. So it's deeper with the Metzach, and that's going to be the Shema that comes from Shem Ab. Okay, we conclude here.